remind the teams and the coaches that any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. Just a minute. Your compliance with team requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. I want to confirm, no, I don't want to do that. All right, so at this point, I would ask each side to introduce participating team members, starting with the attorneys.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Abbott Howe, and I represent the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Sorry,
counsel.
please repeat. Sir, I'm sorry. Please repeat your last name. Abbott?
Abbott Howe, H-O-W-E.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Howe. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Feliciana Sayers, and I represent the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Moira Newman, and I represent the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs.
Welcome, Ms. Newman.
May our witnesses now introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Macklin Gifford, and I am Casey Rogers.
Welcome, Mr. Gifford.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Taylor Sifra, and I am Carson Durst.
Welcome, counsel. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Jordan Merriweather, and I am Warriors.
Welcome to you as well, Mr. Merriweather. Now for the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Sahidi Balaji, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Blake Doncourt and the cross-examination of Carson Durst. I will also be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the defense.
Thank you, Ms. Balaji.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Frankie Kramer, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams, as well as the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, and I will also be conducting the closing statement for the defense.
Thank you, counsel.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Elizabeth Kugler, and today I will be conducting the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs and the direct examination of Skylar Weirs. At this time, may our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Yes, Ms. Kugler, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kai Salter, and today I am Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon. My name is Matena Selby, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Zoe Kugler, and today I am Skylar Weirs.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you. All right. I have some, let me get started. Team members, please raise your right hands. This is the attorneys. Do you promise that the presentation of evidence you're about to, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Any no's? Good. All right, thank you. Witnesses. Do you promise that the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions that are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and the procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Oops. All right, to the extent there are any gallery members, and I'm not sure there are, including teachers and coaches, family members and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and positive role models, and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? All right, I'm sure the answer is yes to that. And finally, our scoring panelists and timers. You promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
You do?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excellent. Thank you all. All right. We will settle in. I am going to, and the judges will remind me, I want to make sure that I give time in between each witness to give the judges an opportunity to score and to make whatever notes they want to make. So I'll try to be mindful of that. Are there any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has 3 preliminary matters.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Howe.
For our first preliminary matter, we request that the stipulated facts be constructively read into the record.
That request will be granted.
For our second preliminary matter, we request that prior to closing arguments, the jury instructions are also constructively read into the record.
That will be granted as well.
And finally, Your Honor, for our third preliminary matter, we request that while entering exhibits, the attorney and the witness both refer to the exhibit on their own, and then once the exhibit has been entered and published, it may be screen shared.
I'm sort of agnostic on that. If you want to screen share it just because of the nature of the competition, we can ask our judges to avert their eyes. Whatever's easiest for you, frankly.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, but thank you for that. Anything else, Mr. Howe?
With that, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
All right, thank you. How about from the defense? Anything preliminarily?
Yes, Your Honor, just one additional preliminary matter. We would ask that timekeepers may use their discretion in stopping time in the event of technical difficulties.
All right. I will guide that. I appreciate that. I will make sure, and if we need to add a few seconds here or there, if anybody has a problem sort of similar than what we had before, I want all of you, first of all, to take a deep breath. Don't worry about the time. We'll get through it. These technical glitches are sort of they're baked in. So I appreciate that, but I will, we'll work together on that.
Thank you,
Anything
Your
else,
Honor.
Ms. Balaji?
No, Your Honor, the defense has no further preliminary matters.
Thank you. Hang on just a moment. All right, with that, is there anything else we need to do before we start with opening arguments? Anything I'm missing?
Shall the scoring panelists keep their video on for openings and closings?
Oh, thank you. That's what I wanted to address exactly. Thank you, Mr. Scarpino. What we're going to do, unless anybody strenuously objects, is we'll have the judges have their video on during the openings and closings, and that way the lawyers can sort of focus their attention on these faces. But otherwise, the judges will have their cameras off during the presentation of evidence. Anybody object to that? I'm happy to hear it.
No objections from the defense,
Okay,
Your
good.
Honor.
All right. All right, thank you. So that's what we'll do. And thank you, Mr. Scarpino. With that, we'll have openings from the plaintiff.
May I proceed, Your Honor? DDT, Agent Orange, Roundup. Young Dakota Weirs was sitting on the couch watching TV when he heard his grandfather begin to play his favorite song. He jumped up to join his grandpa on the piano bench where they sat for hours on end, playing the same song over and over until young Dakota got it right, until he no longer tripped over the tricky chords. That song became their song. He played that song at his first competition. He played that song at his grandfather's funeral, and he played that song as a part of his audition to Juilliard. A few months later, he received a full ride scholarship to the school of his and his grandfather's dreams. But members of the jury, some dreams are too good to come true. Instead of spending his early adulthood at Juilliard, Dakota Weirs was going to doctor's office after doctor's office, trying to figure out what was causing his pain and weight loss. He finally found out it was non-Hodgkin lymphoma. He was too weak to play the simplest song. His cancer not only shattered any hope of a future in music, it robbed him of his closest connection with his grandfather. DDT, Agent Orange, Roundup. What do these all have in common? All were proven carcinogenic, and all were put on the market by companies that did not care if they did or did not cause cancer. Members of the jury, yet again, we have a company trying to hide the dangers of its product. Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Feliciana Sayers, and together with Moira Newman and Abbott Howe, we represent Dakota Weirs, who had his dreams dashed because Lush failed to prevent the dangers of its product. The plaintiff carries the burden in today's case by a preponderance of the evidence. A preponderance of the evidence is this: if there are 2 stacks of paper in front of you, and one stack has even one more page than the other, that side prevails. For Mr. Weirs to prevail, we must prove to you that Lush manufactured a product containing Drufo, that they failed to exercise reasonable care to prevent an unreasonable risk of harm, that Mr. Weirs was someone who should reasonably be expected to use the product, and that Mr. Weirs had damages caused by the defendant's negligence, while the product was being used in a manner the defendant should reasonably have expected. When we meet our burden, the defense has to prove their affirmative defense by preponderance of the evidence. They must prove that Dakota Weirs was more negligent than Lush, and his negligence caused his non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So what is Drufo? Drufo is a bonding agent unique to Lush fertilizer. It bonds the nitrogen to the other chemicals in order to reduce the release of excess nitrates into the soil and water. It is also a pesticide. Lush then marketed Drufo as making its product safer to use and more environmentally conscious. This marketing technique is also known as greenwashing. But members of the jury, let's be clear. No matter how much you dress up a pesticide, its purpose is to kill. Dakota Weirs used Lush fertilizer and developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma from his exposure to Drufo. Dr. Casey Rogers ran his own study on the effects of Drufo and cancer, and Carson Durst worked within Lush fertilizer and saw them acknowledge and suppress Drufo's ties to non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush, cares more about profits than safety. Skylar Weirs has misguided views on modern agritech, and Devin Williams will suspend his ethical duties in favor of environmental marketing gimmicks. During today's trial, ask yourself these 3 questions. 1, how safe is Drufo? Really? 2, do we expect a 14-year-old to be able to protect himself from dangerous chemicals? And 3, did Lush do enough to protect its customers from the potential dangers of its product? At the end of today's trial, Ms. Newman will walk with you through the evidence presented today. She will show you how we have met our burden, and she will ask you to hold Lush fertilizer accountable for their negligence. DDT, Agent Orange, Roundup. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sayers. Give the judges a moment. Ms. Newman. All right, who is open? Let's see, for the defense. Is that Ms. Balaji?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, can the court hear and see me properly?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I can. Whenever you're ready.
Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. May I begin? Good afternoon, Your Honor, counsel, and members of the jury. Today's case centers around an unsafe employee, an unconnected illness, and an unbelievable accusation. Lush Fertilizer Incorporated was a company that was founded by CEO Blake Doncourt in 2000. In the time that Lush Fertilizer Incorporated has been a business, the company and CEO have used their success to give back to impoverished communities, protect the environment, and provide their consumers with quality agricultural products that produce results unmatched by any contender. However, today, Lush Fertilizer Incorporated stands wrongfully accused of negligence. Dakota Weirs, the plaintiff in this case, is claiming that the presence of the chemical compound Drufo in Lush's fertilizer has led to him developing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, that is simply not the case. Lush's own CEO, Blake Doncourt, will tell you that Lush fertilizer went through several rounds of testing that never turned up any carcinogens. He will also tell you that Lush's fertilizer was formulated with such care and safety that it did not even require a warning label to be put on the product. Now, Dakota Weirs will tell you that he worked with countless other chemicals, many of which he doesn't remember the names of or the warnings on them. He will also tell you that he didn't wear the proper protective clothing or use the proper safety equipment to protect himself against those other harmful chemicals. Therefore, claiming that Lush fertilizer and only Lush fertilizer could have given him non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is simply unbelievable. Furthermore, you will hear from Carson Durst, who claims that Lush's business practices were unsafe and were done to protect the face of the company. But Ms. Durst will also tell you that she received mounting complaints about her job performance from her coworkers, and her research is not supported by anyone else at Lush. She will also admit that she did not have access to all the research and data that Lush did into Drufo. Additionally, the plaintiff's expert, Dr. Casey Rogers, will try to tell you that Drufo indefinitely leads to cancer based on a study that he did, where he compared fertilizer effects between farmers and ordinary individuals. However, the defense's expert, Dr. Devin Williams, will tell you that farmers handle fertilizers much more frequently than the average human, and comparing the two is akin to comparing apples and oranges. Dr. Williams will also give clarity on the reasoning behind Drufo being banned in the EU. She will tell you that the studies done to reach the conclusion of the ban were biased, as the results show how Drufo reacts in a lab, but not in the environment, which is where Drufo is used when it is in a fertilizer. Drufo in the environment is actually beneficial, and according to the defense's expert Skylar Weirs, Lush's use of Drufo in its fertilizer could actually help aid the current climate crisis. We, the defense, do not doubt that Dakota Weirs has suffered from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and that this disease has led to many tragedies in his life. But Lush Fertilizer Incorporated is not to blame for those tragedies. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is Sahidi Balaji, and along with my co-counsel Frankie Kramer and Elizabeth Kugler, we represent Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. By the end of this trial, we hope you will side with the defense and agree that this whole case was done to protect an unsafe employee with an unconnected illness in order to make an unbelievable accusation on a company that provides so much aid to so many individuals. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Balaji. Hang on just a moment. All right, judges. First witness, please.
The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Dr. Rogers.
Yes, Your Honor.
There we go. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself to our jurors.
My name is Casey Rogers. Rogers is spelled R-O-G-E-R-S.
Thank you. Ms. Newman.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, what do you do for a living?
I'm a professor in horticulture and entomology, as well as an independent toxicology researcher.
How long have you been working in this field?
At this point, about 20 years.
Please tell the jury about your education.
I have a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture and Chemistry from Colorado State University, as well as a PhD in agriculture and entomology from the University of California, Berkeley.
Have you published any articles?
Over the course of my career, I've published 6 total.
What are the most relevant ones?
Well, the most relevant ones to this case would be my most recent 4. In 2013, Evolutionary Sciences, I published an article called Drufo-Resistant Weeds. In 2017, Biotechnology Information, I published an article called Drufotoxicity and Carcinogenicity, a review of the scientific basis of the European Union assessment. In 2019, in Weed Biology, I published an article called Survey Reveals Frequency of Multiple Resistance to Drufo. And again in 2019, I published an article in The Environmentalist called The Evidence of Human Exposure to Drufo, a review.
What are you working on now?
Currently, I am conducting a study to test the efficacy of protective equipment in mitigating the harm that is inflicted on non-target species from certain toxicants.
At this time, the plaintiff requests that the court recognize Dr. Casey Rogers as an expert in horticulture and toxicology research, as his skill, knowledge, education, experience, and training have been shown, and his testimony will assist the trier of fact in determining a fact and issue today.
So
Objection,
you're
Your
offering the witness with respect on this horticulture and toxicology research? Those are the areas?
Yes, Your Honor.
Specifically. All right. Is there an objection or voir dire, Ms. Kramer?
Yes, Your Honor. Permission to voir dire.
Voir dire, please.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers.
Good afternoon, Ms. Blair.
Thank you. I would like to begin by discussing your education.
Sure.
Pesticide chemistry and toxicology are research interests of yours. Isn't that right?
Yes, it's essentially just pesticide toxicology.
But you don't hold any formal degrees in those areas, do you?
I've been working in this field long enough to be the person who teaches people to get the degrees in this field.
Right, but you yourself do not hold any degrees in those areas.
Correct.
You also don't possess any degrees or formal training in medicine?
Like I said before, I've been working in this field for longer than most people in med school have been alive. If I attended a med school, it would be to teach a course, not to take one.
But let me just be clear, you don't possess any degrees or formal training in medicine?
Again, no, I do not.
More specifically, you don't hold a degree in oncology, the study of cancer?
Oncology is not the study of cancer. Oncology is the study of diagnosing and treating cancer. I'm a toxicologist. My job is to find out why people have cancer, not to find out how to treat their cancer.
So that's a no. You have no formal education concerning cancer.
It's a completely different field.
But you have no formal education concerning cancer.
Yes, correct.
Thank you. Your Honor, the defense does not object to Dr. Rogers being admitted as an expert in horticulture and toxicology. However, we do object to the witness testifying about cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and its effects on the human body, due to the fact that they lack the knowledge, skill, training, and education required to testify as an expert in these areas under Rule 702.
Response, Your Honor?
Yes, just a moment. I'm just writing it down. Okay, yes, please. Ms. Newman, response.
Under Rule 702, it states that an expert needs to be qualified under skill, education, experience, or training, and training. Therefore, Dr. Rogers has testified about his numerous years being a toxicology researcher, and he has written many articles about Drufo and its efficacy. Therefore, all of that knowledge would go to his testimony, go to his credibility as a witness. Not having a certain formal degree in one subject does not mean that he should not be qualified as an expert. He's had over 20 years of experience in that field.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, Ms. Kramer, briefly.
We asked that Dr. Cage Rogers also can't discuss Miss Weir's, nor the effect on her body as well, given that he is not her doctor.
Response, Your Honor?
All right. Let's circle back. Ms. Newman, the real issue is I think that there's an agreement as to some expertise, but what about the ability of the witness to testify about the effects of cancer on the human body generally and on the plaintiff's body in particular?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Case Rogers is a toxicology researcher. Therefore, he would have ample knowledge about the different diagnoses the people he would study would have, and he would have to know those diagnoses to be able to think about the causation. He would never think about giving them that diagnoses because he's not a medical doctor, and we're not offering him one as such. However, in his field, he would be intimately familiar with their diagnoses with cancer or with any illness, because he's looking for how chemicals could have caused that.
All right, I'm ready to rule. The witness will be recognized an expert. Was it horticulture, or was the word horticology? Whatever that is. And then also in toxicology research. With respect to the objection about the effects of cancer on the human body, we'll take that as it comes. I'm not sure that the witness is qualified, but I'm going to let that go to weight rather than admissibility. So go ahead, please.
Dr. Rogers, did you form an expert opinion for today's case?
Yes, I did.
What were the steps you took to reach that opinion?
I conducted a study to test if people who were exposed to Drufo over a long period of time developed any adverse health effects, or whether or not it was a completely safe substance.
You mentioned Drufo. Please tell the jury what that is.
Well, Drufo is a patented bonding agent that Lush uses in all of its products in the United States and has many purposes, one of which is being a herbicide. However, truth be told, it is not a very effective herbicide. And for how Lush is marketed, it is essentially marketed as environmentally friendly, which once again it is not, because it's not an effective herbicide. It is, however, the next in line of very many toxic chemicals that have been released to the market.
Considering this information, why did you conduct a study about the safety of this chemical?
Well, briefly after Drufo was released on the market, I had already begun hearing rumors of possible negative effects of people who were exposed to Drufo over a long period of time, and I decided that I should conduct my own study to test if there was actually any truth behind those rumors.
How did you go about conducting your study?
My study contained 3 test groups. One was of prolonged exposure with essentially almost everyday exposure to Drufo. The second was an occasional exposure group, which was essentially a middle ground between no exposure and almost everyday exposure. And the control group that had no exposure was essentially the group that I based my conclusions off of the test differential in cancer diagnosis.
Why did you choose to study these groups specifically?
Well, I was testing a potentially carcinogenic substance, and I did not want to expose more people to it than were already being exposed. So I chose people who were already using Drufo in their jobs in order to minimize the amount of people that would possibly develop cancer because of their exposure.
Do you believe the results these people produced were reliable?
Absolutely.
Why?
I conducted my study with reliable methods that are common practice in this field. They are intended to produce reliable results, and they did just that.
And what were the results of your study?
They were actually quite shocking. The results of my study were that people in my prolonged exposure group were 10 times more likely to develop cancer as compared to the control group. And people
Objection outside the scope of the witness expertise. Your Honor, I think you're muted.
I'm sorry, your response, please, Ms. Newman.
Dr. Rogers is testifying to the results of his study, something he would have ample knowledge about. And again, as he is a toxicology researcher, he would know the diagnoses that the people he was studying would have. And therefore, their diagnoses would connect to his study because he was looking for the health effects these people would develop. So he would know these health effects.
Thank you. Reply, Ms. Kramer.
That looking at that result would go to the cancer's effect on the human body, which we have developed that we're not quite sure Dr. Rogers is quite qualified to be talking about that today.
All right. I again believe this goes more to weight than admissibility, so the objections respectfully overruled.
I'll ask again, Dr. Rogers, what were the results of your study?
The results were that those in my study with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to develop cancer than those who had no exposure. And people who had prolonged exposure in my study were 5 times more likely to develop cancer than those with occasional.
You mentioned cancers. Were there any cancers that were more frequent than others?
Yes, there were multiple types of cancer that I found, but the most common one was non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
Why does this include non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
Well, non-Hodgkin lymphoma is a environmentally contracted cancer, meaning it's caused by exposure to certain environmental conditions, and in this case, one of those environmental conditions was exposure to drupe.
Did your study test for anything else?
Well, my study had essentially a part 2, because the first part was to test if drupe was bad. The second part was more on finding out why drupe is bad and how it actually gets absorbed by the human body. And that part of the study also had 2 parts. One was to find out more of how it was absorbed, and the second was to find out how to mitigate the effects of drupe.
How did you conduct this study looking to see how drupe entered the body?
Well, I essentially used the same testing groups, and I examined where drupe essentially ended up. You could tell from essentially where it was in the body, how it was absorbed, and I found that it was...
Objection outside the scope of the witness expertise.
Ms. Newman.
Dr. Rogers is again testifying to the results of his study and how he went about conducting his study. Your Honor, you admitted Dr. Rogers as an expert, and therefore this testimony falls squarely under his area of expertise as a toxicology researcher. He would be able to test subjects for how different chemicals enter their body, or else he would not be able to test the effects of those chemicals on the body.
All right, I'll allow it. The objections respectfully overruled.
I'll ask again, how did you test for how drupe entered the body?
I essentially examined where drupe was in the body of people who were exposed to it, and I found that it was primarily absorbed through contact with the skin or through being inhaled through the respiratory system.
And how did you go about conducting the other part of this second part of your study?
Well, essentially, I was testing to find out if certain protective equipment was actually effective in preventing the negative effects of exposure to drupe. And the issue with that part of the study is that it is still ongoing because there just wasn't enough time to test if they were truly effective. And to be fair, protective equipment is often not even provided to the workers exposed to drupe. So the study is still ongoing because it needs more time to find accurate conclusions.
When reviewing for this trial, was anything familiar?
Yes, so I reviewed Dakota Weir's medical and employment records prior to coming here, and something that I noticed was quite familiar in his employment records was that he was exposed to drupe over a course of about 4 years for essentially the same exposure level as those in my group who had, in my study, who had prolonged exposure and were 10 times more likely to develop cancer.
A little early, I asked if you had formed any expert opinions for today's case. Please tell the jury what that expert opinion is now.
Dakota Weir's case of non-Hodgkin lymphoma was caused by exposure to drupe and to drupe only.
And why are you so sure that it was drupe that caused the cancer in today's case?
Well, having both the results of my study and the employment records of Dakota Weirs and the fact that he is in the unfortunate circumstance he is in now, there's more than enough evidence to conclude that Drufo essentially is the only cause to Dakota Weir's cancer.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Newman. Let's give our judges a moment. Ms. Kramer.
Yes, Your
Oh,
Honor.
before we start, don't start the clock. I wonder if our witness can adjust the sound a little bit. We were struggling. It sounded like you're a little bit far away. And so I'm wondering if you can, Dr. Rogers, if you can adjust your sound in some way. Take your time if you can. If not, we'll live. Go ahead.
Computer closer and speak up.
All right, so if you can adjust microphone settings. If not, we'll just speak up, as you say. All right. Try again.
Is it better now, Your Honor?
Yes, thank you. All right, let's get started. And Ms. Kramer.
All right. Dr. Rogers, I want to focus on your purported study of Drufo. In your study, you observed the effects of Drufo on farm laborers and gardeners.
Yes, I did.
And you claim these people were more likely to be diagnosed with cancer because they used Drufo.
Well, yes, their exposure to Drufo was the cause of their higher incidence of developing cancer.
Right, that's what you claim. However, people in agricultural professions are exposed to lots of chemicals and hazardous materials.
Ms. Kramer, I don't just claim that Drufo caused everyone's cancer that was exposed to it in my study. I know for a fact that it did.
That's not the answer to my question. I asked, however, people in agricultural professions are exposed to lots of chemicals and hazardous materials, correct?
That's why they were spread across my test groups. They were not only in one, so that the differences in people's day-to-day lives would not have an effect on the outcome of my study.
But it's
yes
possible.
Is that a yes or a no, sir?
It's a yes, essentially.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Kramer.
Thank you, Your Honor. So it's possible that these people developed cancer from other hazardous materials that they worked with?
Ms. Kramer, like I said, they were spread across all three groups of my study. Therefore, they were not exposed to chemicals that would have had an effect on the outcome of my study because it was a constant factor across all my groups. It essentially would eliminate all risk of my results being invalid, and everything else would be lost in the mix.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. A simple yes or no will suffice.
I'll try.
And this study you conducted has not been peer-reviewed or replicated?
That's not in my statement. Would you like me to answer anyway?
No, thank you, Dr. Rogers. Doctor, you claim that Drufo causes cancer, and while Lush obviously disputes that and provide its own expert to refute your findings, I want to imagine for a second that you were somehow correct.
Objection, Your Honor. Wasting the jury's time.
So go ahead.
Dr. Rogers was admitted as an expert in his field as horticulture and toxicology research. He has over 20 years of experience. Therefore, imagining that the results of his study were anything less than incorrect, were anything less than absolutely correct, will be wasting the jury's time, as he has shown that he applied reliable methods and used them reliably. There's absolutely no evidence that any of his study was conducted unreliably, and to assume differently would be wasting the jury's time.
All right. The objection under Rule 403 is overruled. The other objections are overruled as well.
Dr. Rogers, you recommend that anyone working with Drufo should wear long sleeves and pants?
Well, the thing is, since I have proven that Drufo is bad, it is essentially the best thing people can do to try and protect themselves in any way they can. I can't prove that it will actually help save their life, but it couldn't hurt to try and protect themselves from Drufo.
So that's a yes?
Yes, it's a yes.
And they should wear a medical grade protective mask as well.
I refer you to my previous answer.
Okay. And you made these recommendations because you view them as a way to protect workers from harmful chemicals.
I made them because I wanted to help people try and protect themselves from these chemicals. There is essentially no data to actually prove that wearing a mask and wearing long sleeves will actually help save your life when you are exposed to drupa. I'm trying to help you.
So that's a yes, you did make those recommendations?
Your question was not, did I make recommendations?
I believe I asked, you made these recommendations because you view them as a way to protect workers from harmful chemicals?
And my answer is that I did not view them as a way to protect workers from harmful chemicals. I made these recommendations as a way to hopefully help protect people specifically from drufo because it is way more carcinogenic than most chemicals.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Now, I'd like to talk about your financial compensation in this case. You're being paid to testify here today?
I'm being paid for my time, not for my testimony.
And if you win this case, you'll benefit from future lawsuits you'll testify in?
I'm not going to be the one that wins this case if it goes the way it should. Dakota Weirds will be the one who wins this case if it goes the way it should. And I would hope that if I am able to help other people who are involved in lawsuits against people who have exposed them to certain chemicals such as drufo, that they will be compensated fairly for the essentially atrocities that Lush has committed against them.
But to be clear, you stated that if you win this case, it will open the door to class action lawsuits and you will be on the forefront of that battle.
I believe I said if the plaintiff wins this case, or I actually might have said if this case goes the way it should. I did not say I will win this case.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Okay. Or just a moment. Ms. Newman, redirect, please.
Yes, Your Honor. What do you expect will happen if this case goes how it should, as you stated?
Well, what I expect to happen is for other people who have been unfairly exposed to drufo without proper warning will essentially all sue Lush in order to get compensation for the essentially crimes that Lush has committed against them. They were unfairly not warned about the exposure to a product they were working with, and I believe that they do deserve compensation. I hope the jury does as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Okay, thank you. Just a moment. All right. Next witness, please.
Your Honor, the plaintiff calls Carson Durst. Good
All right,
afternoon, Ms. Durst.
Ms. Durst, let me swear you in. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Carson Durst. That is spelled D-U-R-S-T.
Thank you. Mr. Howe.
Ms. Durst, what do you do for a living?
I work at a company called Terrace Greenery, where I lead the research and development team there.
Where did you work before you worked at Terrace Greenery?
I worked at another company called Lush Fertilizer that did the same fertilizer work, and I was also a member of the R&D team or research and development team there.
So why do you no longer work at Lush Fertilizer?
When I was working at Lush, I didn't believe that I was supported by my employees or I was given many opportunities to learn and grow. And so I went to look for a job outside of the company. And I found this really amazing position at Terrace Greenery, and I've been there for the past 17 years.
Were there any complications that arose regarding your departure from Lush?
Lush Fertilizers sued me because I had signed a non-compete agreement when I first started working there in '01 that I'd forgotten about because, I was just so excited to start my first job. And that was all I could think about was signing the papers that I needed to sign, making sure I read them. But it was a while ago and the excitement was just overflowing.
What happened after they sued you?
I went to court with Lush Fertilizer and we settled a lawsuit and everything has been resolved.
Going back to your time working at Lush Fertilizer, what kind of work did you do?
So I was there from '03 to '06. And so in '03, they were testing the safety of Drufo because in '01, they had started creating the product of Drufo.
We just heard Dr. Rogers testify as to what Drufo was, but why was Drufo so important?
It was really important to Lush because it allowed them to make environmentally friendly products, and that's something that their company is based off of and they pride themselves on.
So specifically with this product, with Drufo, what did you do?
I researched a chemical compound called nitrogen phosphorus carbonate as I was part of the team researching the safety of Drufo.
What kind of research did you do to this compound?
I did mainly literature research. So I found a study that talked about the effects of this chemical compound on rats.
What's your understanding of how this study was conducted?
When I went through my research and I picked up the study and I started reading it, I learned that rats, both male and female, were given different amounts of this chemical formula in their feed from 12 days of life to natural death, and then their remains were analyzed.
What were you able to learn from this study?
I learned two things.
Objection, facts not in evidence. I believe you're muted, Your Honor.
Yeah, response, please.
Your Honor, Ms. Durst is testifying to these facts from what she learned from this study and what she learned, and the facts that are not in evidence are the facts that Ms. Durst is testifying on, bringing them into evidence right now.
The objection's overruled.
Ms. Durst, what did you learn from this study?
I learned that this chemical compound, so C3NO9P, can cause cancer in rats, and also that exposure at a younger age can increase the chances of developing adverse health effects.
Was this study the only extent of research done into the safety of Drufo by Lush?
No, it was just one of the many research studies that I conducted while I was at Lush and that Lush did.
And with this study that you found, what did you do with those findings?
Well, the first study, which was the rat study done in June of '03, I documented my findings from not only this specific study, but all of the research that I had done in my lab notebook on June 10th of '03, and I gave it to my boss, Jerry Langley.
What other research into the safety of Drufo did Lush do?
I was also at Lush in September of 2003 when they did a study into the effects of Drufo on humans.
Ms. Durst, could you please refer to Exhibit 4?
Okay. Okay, I'm ready when you are, Counsel.
Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It was the email that my boss sent me and the rest of the R&D team on September 18th of 2003.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of that email?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff requests that Exhibit 4 be admitted into evidence, as its accuracy and authenticity have been shown.
Yes, Your Honor. Oh, yes, Your Honor. The defense has multiple objections to this document. Would you like us to address them all at the same time or one at a time?
Why don't you go in order? Give me all of them and then we'll address them seriatim.
All right, Your Honor. Our first objection is to hearsay, the best evidence rule, and then the fact that this witness has signed a non-disclosure agreement that bars them from testifying on the way that Lush handles their business or their company.
All right, thank you.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, please. Start with hearsay, please.
Your Honor, for the hearsay objection, this exhibit is not hearsay. As pursuant to Rule 801D2, it is a statement by a party opponent, that opponent being Lush Fertilizer, specifically the employee Jerry Langley, a member of Lush's upper management.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may.
The defense believes that this is not a statement by a party opponent, as Lush Incorporated has combed through its server and found no original copy of this email, and therefore it is not a statement by a party opponent.
Response, Your Honor.
Briefly.
Your Honor, Ms. Durst testified that Jerry Langley, a member of Lush's upper management, did send her this email, making it a statement from a party opponent.
All right. I find that it is a statement by a party opponent and therefore not hearsay. So I'm going to reject the hearsay objection. How about the best evidence?
Your Honor, we are entering this exhibit right now to bring in the best evidence.
So what you're saying is this is the best evidence. Is that right?
Your Honor, this email is a copy of the email that Ms. Durst received and is the best evidence.
All right. Response?
Your Honor, this purported email is not an original, rather it is a fabricated document, as evidenced by the fact that it cannot be found anywhere on Lush's email server. Thus, under Rule 1003, it cannot be admitted because there is genuine question raised about its authenticity, and the circumstances make it unfair to admit this duplicate.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, please, Mr. Hill.
Ms. Durst has testified that this is an email that she did indeed receive from Jerry Langley. If the defense has questions about its accuracy, we ask that they ask those questions on cross. But as Ms. Durst has testified under oath that this is an email that she received, it is a copy of the original email and is admissible under Rule 1002.
The court rejects the best evidence objection. I overrule that objection to the extent that it's based upon an argument that it's fabricated. That's for the jury to decide. And certainly this is a contested piece of evidence. It is the only existing one, and I find that it is the best evidence. So let's talk about the non-disclosure issue briefly.
Your Honor, Ms. Durst testified that the non-compete agreement and the non-disclosure agreement were both settled in court around 15 years ago and has no bearing to the case today.
Response to that, please.
Yes, Your Honor. This witness still signed a non-disclosure agreement, which is an exhibit in this case, in Exhibit 5. And the provisions of that agreement expressly forbid this witness from discussing trade secrets on Lush Fertilizer. And while we continue to assert that this email is fake, if the plaintiff insists that it was in fact created by Lush, then indeed it would be a trade secret controlled by the non-disclosure agreement, and thus should not be discussed in any event, because as the agreement provides, if Carson Durst testifies as to these trade secrets, irreparable harm will occur and money damages will be insufficient to compensate Lush.
All right. The court's going to reject this argument as well, and I reject it strenuously. The existence of a non-disclosure agreement does not allow somebody to hide evidence in a court of law. It prevents disclosure for competitive purposes, but certainly you can't shield evidence. So notwithstanding anything else about the non-disclosure agreement, that objection's overruled. So let's go forward. The Exhibit 4 is admitted.
Your Honor, may we now publish this exhibit to the jury?
You may.
Ms. Durst, where is your name on the email recipient list?
My name is the last name on the first line. So
Is Blake Doncourt's name also on that list?
Yes, his name is right next to mine. So if you see my last name, Durst, and then you follow over Blake Doncourt right there.
Was there anything in this email that struck out to you as particularly important?
Yes. One thing was that Lush had done previous studies and found possible carcinogenic inequalities in those studies. Second was that Lush was going to label their June '03 study, the one that I was a part of, inconclusive. And lastly, that Lush was going to conduct another in-house study.
You may now take the exhibit down. So in this next in-house study that Lush conducted, what were some of the findings?
I learned that Drufo is a potential carcinogen in humans, and that Drufo has a possible link to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Objection, opinion by a lay witness.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Ms. Durst is not testifying as to her own opinions on the carcinogenicity of Lush, rather relaying the opinions of experts in this field that conducted studies on the compound.
Why doesn't that make it just hearsay then?
Your Honor, as these researchers were employees of Lush, it is not hearsay under Rule 801D2, as it is once again a statement by a party opponent.
All right. I am going to sustain the objection constructively, but given what we're doing here, I'm going to let the
Your Honor,
witness
I have an alternate response as well.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Howe.
These statements are not being entered for the truth of the matter asserted, rather for the fact that Lush Fertilizer was aware that these claims were being made by researchers on the company about Drufo.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Yes, what about that? I think that's well taken, so go ahead.
Your Honor, this is being offered for the truth of the matter asserted, as the truth of the matter asserted is whether or not Drufo causes cancer, and these statements are bluntly saying that Drufo does cause cancer.
Response,
I
Your
think
Honor.
no need. It's really offered to show knowledge more than anything, which is not the matter asserted. So again, the objection's overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Howe.
Ms. Durst, when these findings were presented, were there any notable people inside the room?
Yes, there were, which was not usual for a normal R&D meeting that we had, but my boss was there, so Jerry Langley. And then Alex Monroe was there as well, and he was another member of Lush's management team. It's one of the higher ups that I didn't see very often.
Did Lush prepare, at the conclusion of this study, an official report?
They most certainly did.
Did you read this report?
I did. I received a copy of it in January of 2004.
And did this report contain any recommendations of something that Lush could do to make their product safer?
There was a recommendation to bake Drufo to eliminate any possibility of it being carcinogenic.
And to your knowledge, Ms. Durst, did Lush ever bake Drufo?
Not while I was there, and I haven't heard anything from anybody or on the news or anything since. So I would have to say no.
And was there any mention in this report of the possible link to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that was brought up during the meeting?
No. And I didn't understand why, because that was a really heavily talked about topic. And I thought it should have been mentioned, but it wasn't.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you. Give our judges a moment. All right, cross-examination, please. Ms. Balaji,
Yes, Your Honor.
whenever you're
Good
ready.
afternoon. Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst.
Good afternoon.
I want to start by focusing on the time you spent at Lush and your relationship with the CEO of Lush, my apologies, Blake Doncourt. In just 3 months at your time at Lush, you were promoted to a full-time position, correct?
Yes, I was.
And you said that this was because you were performing at a higher level and that it had nothing to do with your relationship with the Doncourts, correct?
I was doing my job well, and I did indeed deserve the promotion that I received.
So that's a yes to my question. It was because you were performing at a higher level?
Certainly.
However, Blake pulled strings to get you hired into the company, correct?
Yes, it was good to have some connections and to know some people that were working within the company.
And later, Blake even admitted that he overlooked more qualified applicants to hire you?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Ms. Balaji?
Your Honor, may I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
Briefly. I don't know if this is permissible, but I'm allowing it.
Your Honor, this statement is not being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted, but rather the effect on the listener.
Mr. Howe?
Your Honor, counsel or Ms. Durst has not laid any foundation for what effect this may have on the listener, and it is rather being admitted for the truth of the matter asserted that that Mr. Doncourt did overlook qualified applicants.
May I respond, Your Honor?
You may not. The objection's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
And later, Blake even admitted that he overlooked more qualified applicants to hire you?
Told me that, yes.
Now, there were mounting complaints from your coworkers about your job performance, correct?
Unfortunately, there were, yes, but those were, I didn't believe that those would be true. But it was sad that people that I worked with and that I trusted could say those things about me. So it hurt a little bit.
So much so that that the executive team made you sign a performance improvement plan?
Again, it was a chance for me to show Lush that I deserved my job, which I did. And I think that Lush was having a couple second thoughts, but I did that to say that I was not, and that I was in with this company and that I was doing what I was supposed to do.
I'm sorry, Ms. Durst, that wasn't quite my question. My question was the executive team made you sign a performance improvement plan, correct?
They did, I'm not going to deny that.
And you complained to Blake about this performance improvement plan, correct?
I was having some concerns with my boss, and so I did talk to him, and this was one of the conversations that I did have with him. So yes.
Correct. Of course. And you were upset when Blake took Jerry Langley's side over yours.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You were upset when Blake took Jerry Langley's side over yours.
I think he told me to do my job and figure out what I need to do on my own. I don't know if he mentioned he was taking somebody's side or not.
But he did tell you that you should talk with your problems about Jerry Langley to you, correct? Or to him, correct?
I'm sorry, can you rephrase that?
Yes, of course, my apologies. But Blake did say that you should settle your disputes on your own, and he didn't interfere in the conflict, correct? And that hurt?
He did say that, yes.
But before you claimed that your relationship with the Doncourts never affected your work, correct?
It did not.
Now, I'd like to talk about your position at the company and whether it provided you with a big picture of the research into Drufo. You were hired in 2000. Oh.
Which position? I held 2 positions at Lush.
Just your time at the company.
But you said position, which position? So I can have a little more clarification to answer your question better.
Just your time at Lush Incorporated, Ms. Durst. You were hired in 2003 to work with the research and development team at Lush, correct?
As an intern.
Of course, but Lush had been working on the development of Drufo for 2 years prior to your arrival.
Starting in 2001.
And so you don't really know about any research the company did with Drufo or the findings the company made during those years you weren't there?
When I got onto the job at 2003, I did get a brief overview of what was going on, but I did not specifically focus my information and what I did on the development of Drufo, more the safety of Drufo and what I learned from that, if that answer makes sense.
But you did work in the research and development part of Drufo later on, correct?
In 2003, I was hired on as an intern for the R&D team and then later promoted to another position, still on the R&D team. So yes.
You even admit that most of what went up the flagpole regarding Drufo was above your pay grade as an intern, correct?
As an intern, I didn't know everything. I did what I was told to do, and I trusted that my boss and Lush did what was appropriate and did what was responsible with information that I found and that my team found.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. A simple yes or no answer will suffice. And for the first 3 months that you worked with Lush, you can only speculate on a higher level research done on Drufo?
Again, I was an intern. I didn't have access to everything. I didn't have enough education and information to learn there, but I did what I was told to do. And I trusted that my boss and the other employees that were above me did what was right.
So that's a yes?
Absolutely.
Moving on, I want to talk about your alleged research into Drufo and the claims that you've made against the company's research practices. Now, your research was into only one of the chemical compounds of Drufo, correct?
That was my job, to research nitrogen phosphorus carbonate only. And other members of my team did other research on other chemicals, but that was what my job was to do, and I was at Lush to do my job.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. A simple yes or no answer will suffice. And as a part of your research into this compound, you found only one study from Europe that mentioned it?
I found multiple studies, but I did focus on this study when I found some results that were a little concerning.
Once again, Ms. Durst, a simple yes or no answer will suffice. And the study said that the compound used was supplied by a French company, correct?
Yes. Give me a
But
second.
Drufo,
Yes. No, go.
But,
go.
but Drufo is engineered and manufactured by Lush, correct?
Yes, Drufo is their flagship product.
Thank you. After a meeting with the research and development team at Drufo, you received a copy of the study report on Drufo, correct?
I did, correct.
And this study mentioned several aspects about Drufo.
It did, yes.
But non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was not specifically addressed?
Not specifically, but this study did talk about the effects this chemical compound had to be cancerous. So it did mention cancer on rats, and then it also did talk about that more studies should be done to test levels of carcinogenicity in women and children.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. A simple yes or no answer will suffice. It didn't address non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, though, correct?
That specific cancer, no, but it did mention cancer.
Now, you claim that Lush phrased parts of the report because they were trying to protect their image, correct?
I'm sorry, the rat report, Lush's report, which report?
Lush's report.
The first report or the second report?
The one that hit your desk when you were,
Okay.
Yes, when you were promoted as lead of the research and development team.
Okay. Can you please re-ask the question? I got a little lost there.
Of course, you claim that Lush phrased parts of the report because they were trying to protect their image, correct?
From that email that I gained and from reading the report, I believe that Lush wanted a certain result, maybe confirmation bias, if you've ever heard of that term. And so they wanted me and my team to frame the information that we found to fit the result. Or if we didn't get data that they wanted, then we were supposed to leave that data out and put only in the data that made sense to get Lush's conclusion. As Lush, they sent this email and they said that their first study, their June study, was labeled inconclusive. And so they wanted a second study. I do not know exactly why that study was labeled inconclusive, but I believe that was another example of that confirmation bias.
Objection, Your Honor. The witness is irresponsive.
I'll let the answer stand, and the jury can make whatever it will out of that answer. If you want to follow up with anything, you certainly may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Finally, I want to talk about this purported email that you claim is relevant.
It is relevant and it is true.
You worked for Lush. You claim to have received an email about research dealing with possible carcinogens in Drufo, correct?
I'm sorry, the first part of your question cut out. I would really appreciate if you could re-ask.
Of course. Now, while you still worked for Lush, you claim to have received an email about research dealing with possible carcinogens in Drufo, correct?
I did receive the email. It is true. I do not claim to receive it because I did receive it and I did bring a copy with it to trial with me, and that is labeled as Exhibit 4.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. And in this email, it was made clear that concerns or questions could be talked about with Jerry Langley over email, correct?
Yes.
But we don't have any emails from you about your concerns with Drufo.
I didn't feel the email was the best way to reach her. I felt that having a face-to-face conversation was going to be more authentic and I would be able to get my point across and it would stay with her and she would actually take some real action. So I felt that an email was not going to do the job as well as a face-to-face conversation could.
We don't have any emails from you, correct? Because you didn't voice your concerns over email.
As I said, I voiced my concerns person to person and that was the way that I hoped she would receive it best, but because an email did not work. And I like to voice my concerns to people and be authentic and sound like I care. And an email does not do that, as well as a conversation does.
So no emails.
No emails, no, of conversations. But this email that Jerry sent is authentic and is true because I have a copy of it here today.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Give our judges a moment.
Yes, Your Honor.
Hang on just a moment, Mr. Howell. 1 second. All right, sir, redirect.
Ms. Durst, did you ever voice your concerns with Jerry Langley?
I did, with the genuine, authentic conversation. I felt that an email was not going to do the job.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. Next witness, please.
Your Honor, the defense calls Dakota Weirs to the stand.
All right, Ms. Sayers. Dakota Weirs.
Good afternoon, Mr. Weirs. My name is Feliciana
I'm sorry,
Sayers.
I apologize. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
All right, thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, or good afternoon. My name is Dakota Weirs. That's spelled W-E-I-R-S.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Sayers.
Mr. Weirs, what do you do?
Well, the truth is I currently don't do much, and that's because I can't do much because of my illness.
What kind of illness?
Recently, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, cancer.
What did you do before you were diagnosed with cancer?
Before I had cancer, I truly felt alive. I was an active member of my community. I volunteered at the local homeless shelter, got good grades. One of the aspects I enjoyed most about life was being able to play the piano.
Why did you enjoy the piano so much?
Whenever I played the piano, I could just go into my own world and vibe with the music and let it take me wherever it took me. One of the most important things about the piano was the connection it built between me and my grandpa, who sadly passed away.
Mr. Weirs, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your grandfather. Were you any good at playing the piano?
Well, after some time I'm playing and just the inspiration for my grandpa, I got quite good at it, yeah.
Did anything come from your skill?
I got accepted into Juilliard, my dream school. My dreams were coming true and I got a full ride scholarship.
Did you end up attending Juilliard?
No, I didn't end up going to Juilliard because around the time I was leaving for college, I started developing some symptoms. I was constantly tired and I was losing weight so rapidly. I had no idea what was wrong with me.
What did you do?
I went from doctor to doctor just trying to figure out what problem I had, and eventually I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
What kind of symptoms do you experience with non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
As I said, I'm constantly tired. I have swollen lymph nodes, sharp chest pains, and I can't even sit in long places of time without bruising.
How has this impacted your life?
Well, can't do anything anymore. I mean, all I do is sleep or lay on my couch and watch TV. I can't even play the simplest songs on my piano anymore. And worst of all, my future has been ruined. And I don't think I'll ever get to go to the school of my dreams in this condition.
Speaking of non-Hodgkin lymphoma, have you ever been in contact with Drufo?
I was in contact with Drufo back when I worked at Havens Landscaping.
What is Havens Landscaping?
Well, when I was 14, I decided to go work at Havens for 4 years until I was 18 to save up for college, which now I realize was pointless.
Circling back, what do you know about Drufo?
I know that Drufo is one of the main chemicals in Lush fertilizer because one day I was sitting at my home and watching TV on the couch as always now, and a news story came on about Drufo and its effects.
Objection, hearsay.
Response, Your Honor?
Response to the hearsay objection, please.
Your Honor, this is not hearsay, as this is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted. This is instead being offered for the effect on the listener, Mr. Weirs, who then took this news story and researched Drufo, which led it to this case today.
Your Honor, I believe you're muted.
All right, I'm sorry about that. I'll give you a brief reply, Ms. Kugler.
Your Honor, while this may be being offered for the effect on the listener, I don't believe that Mr. Weirs can testify as to any of the effects of Drufo simply off of this hearsay, as that was offered for the truth of the matter asserted.
All right. I think the objection's a little bit premature, and I'm going to overrule it.
What do you know about Drufo?
In the news story, it said that Drufo was the main ingredient in Lush, and it also was linked to the cancer that I have, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Did you ever work with Lush Fertilizer?
I work with Lush all the time back at Havens, yeah.
Were you ever instructed to follow any safety measures while working with Lush Fertilizer?
Look, the boss always told us to wear a mask and protect exposed skin, and I did it for the first 2 weeks, but then none of the adults did, so I just followed what they did. I mean, I would have if it said it would have given me cancer.
And why was the news story you saw important?
The news story linked Drufo to the cancer that I have, and seeing as I worked with it for 4 years, it helped me connect the dots.
What did you do after you saw the news story?
I immediately called my ex-boss to warn him about the effects of Drufo, and I also asked him to send me a picture of the label on the Drufo bottles.
And did he?
Yeah, he did.
Mr. Weirs, you should have a copy of Exhibit 1 in front of you.
Okay.
What is Exhibit 1?
This is a picture of the label that he sent me.
Is this an accurate copy of the label as you saw it?
Yes, it is.
Has it been altered in any way?
No.
Your Honor, at this time we request that Exhibit 1 be entered into evidence for its accuracy and authenticity have been shown.
Ms. Kugler?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 1 will be admitted. Exhibit 1 will be admitted.
Permission to publish by screen sharing to the jury?
That is granted.
Mr. Weirs, what stood out to you about this label?
Well, when you look at the actual label, you can see that there's no official warning. I mean, the worst it says is an eye irritation, not cancer.
Did anything else on this label stand out to you as important?
Yeah, if you look under the ingredients and active ingredients, it says it contains Drufo. And I did a little more research on this and realized that Drufo wasn't in all Lush fertilizers.
What do you mean Drufo isn't in all Lush fertilizers?
Well, I did research into Drufo in France or Lush in France, and I realized that it doesn't have Drufo. It's actually banned in the entire European Union.
Why is it banned in the European Union?
I don't know why it's banned. I'm not a scientist. I just know that I have the cancer now.
Mr. Weirs, let's talk about Skylar Weirs. Who is Skylar Weirs?
Skylar is my twin.
Did your twin work at Havens with you?
Skylar and I did everything when we were younger, but they didn't work at Havens, no, because they were allergic to grass.
To your knowledge, does Miss Weirs have non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
No, she doesn't.
To your knowledge, does she have any form of cancer?
No.
Are you and your sister still close?
Skylar and I aren't as close as we were anymore because I feel that she resents me because all of our father's money is going to my treatment.
Mentioned lack of personal
Not to her.
knowledge.
Okay, so the objection's lack of personal knowledge. What's the response?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 701, Mr. Weirs is testifying on his rationally based perception. He started his testimony saying, "I believe," which is his rationally based perception on his and his sister's relationship.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may briefly.
Your Honor, I don't believe that Mr. Weirs can adequately know the true feelings of his sister. His statement was that he believed Skylar resented him, which I don't believe can be ascertained from a simple perception.
All right,
Response, Your Honor?
briefly.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 602, need for personal knowledge, Mr. Weirs has the personal knowledge as they are siblings, and he is very aware of their relationship and how they view each other.
Well, I am not sure that an adequate foundation was laid, but I'm going to overrule the objection and let the jury consider it for what it's worth. Go ahead.
Mr. Weirs, what is your perception of you and Skylar Weirs' relationship?
Like I said, I feel that she resents me now because all of the money from our father is going to my treatment and not to her.
Mr. Weirs, why are you here today?
Look, this cancer has truly ruined my life. I mean, I look back at the times when I used to help kids in National Honor Society and tutor them, and I never really liked doing it, but now I realize how much I took that kind of stuff for granted because now I can barely move. I would do anything to go back to the life that I had. And I know that it might be too late for me, but if Lush is held accountable, I feel that it could save other people's lives.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Our judges a moment. Ms. Kugler, whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I get a brief time check? All right, thank you. Hello, Mr. Weirs.
Good afternoon.
Before we begin, on behalf of Lush Fertilizer, I'd like to offer you my sympathies. I understand that cancer is a terrible thing, and we all hope that your fight is a successful one.
I appreciate that, but I do hope it's sincere.
I'd like to begin by asking you a few questions about your employment at Haven Landscaping. You worked for Haven Landscaping since you were 14, correct?
I worked there for 4 years when I was 14, and I stopped working there when I was 18.
And your primary job there was to spread seed and fertilizer.
That's correct.
I'd like to direct your attention to Exhibit 1, which has been previously admitted. My co-counsel should be sharing that shortly. Can you see that all right, Mr. Weirs?
It's loading. Oh yeah, now I see it.
Excellent. Mr. Weirs, you claimed in your witness statement that the label on luscious fertilizer had no warning.
Objection, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 613, improper impeachment, Mr. Weirs has to be given the opportunity to explain, admit, or deny any statements made, any prior statements. Ms. Kugler bringing up what he said in his statement is improper.
All right, Ms. Kugler?
Your Honor, I'm not trying to impeach the witness. On cross-examination, anything that Mr. Weirs has said in his prior statement can be examined, and I am not quite clear. If Your Honor could explain why opposing counsel feels that this is an impeachment, that would be greatly appreciated.
Well, I can't explain that, but I can explain what my ruling is. My ruling is that this is permissible, and so I'm going to overrule the objection as well.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, you claimed in your witness statement and in prior testimony that the label on luscious fertilizer had no warnings.
There is no official warning on this.
Yes, and however, on the right section of the label, the word hazards is written in all capital letters.
Yeah, it says hazards and caution. That's not the same as an official warning label, counsel.
That wasn't quite my question, Mr. Weirs. My question was whether that word is on the label.
I said yes, the word hazards is there, not warning.
Directly beneath it, it reads caution, avoid contact with eyes.
Objection, Your Honor. Cumulative. This exhibit has already been entered and published to the jury. Reading this exhibit is cumulative evidence.
That's overruled.
Pursuant to Rule 403.
Objections respectfully overruled. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Directly beneath it, it reads caution, avoid contact with eyes or clothing.
It does say that.
And beneath that instruction, the label recommends that you, the user, wear protective clothing to cover any exposed skin.
It recommends that, yeah.
As well as the label instructing you to wear a respirator or an N95 mask while maintaining proper PPE.
It says all of that, but it does not say it'll give you cancer if you don't.
Mr. Weirs, all of my questions can be answered with a simple yes or no. So if you could answer my next questions with a yes or no, that would be appreciated.
I will try my.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. My apologies. And your boss instructed you to follow these regulations as well?
As I said, the boss always told us this, but the adults didn't, and I just followed what the other workers were doing.
But the employee guidelines gave you these instructions as well.
The employee guidelines, what do you mean by that?
The employee guidelines that you were given on the job?
Just basically, yeah, what my boss said.
But you didn't wear any of those items, did you?
I did what the adults did, and look, if I showed up to work dressed up in the mask and all this safety gear, I would have been made fun of.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Mhm. All right. Ms. Sayers, redirect, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, why did you not continue to follow the recommendations made by your boss?
Look, there are multiple reasons. One, the adults didn't, the people I was looking up to didn't. And two, I mean, I wish it would have said it would have ruined my life, because I would have definitely wore the safety gear, but I would have probably not even worked with the product at all if it said it would give me cancer.
Was there any official warning on the label?
No, there wasn't. It just said an eye irritation.
Is that the only potential danger
Objection.
listed on that label? Response, Your
Go
Honor?
ahead. Go ahead, counsel,
Honor,
with your
this is-
objection. Wait, there's an objection, so let's hear on that. Ms. Kugler?
Your Honor, I objected to a leading question. The attorney is leading the witness to their answer.
All right.
Response, Your Honor?
Briefly.
Your Honor, this is not a leading question, as I did not assume the answer for Mr. Weirs. He is free to say yes, no, or any other appropriate response.
Right, the objection's overruled. Although it was a yes/no question, it didn't suggest an answer, so the leading objection's overruled.
Is there any other warning listed on that label?
No, just eye irritation, skin irritation. That's all, not cancer.
Thank you, Mr. Weirs. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right. The witness is excused. Thank you for your testimony. Give our judges a moment. Is there any other evidence from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Notwithstanding the rules of the competition, we're going to take a brief break so that I have found over the years that a restroom break halfway through is helpful. So let's take exactly 4 minutes and we'll see you then. As soon as the captains think everybody's ready, let's get started.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
Okay, did I give everybody enough time? Are the plaintiffs, everybody here from the plaintiff side?
Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Outstanding. Thank you all. All right. Who has the first defense? Oh, let me make sure our judges are here. Let's see them. Hi, Mr. Scarpino. Hello, Ms. Burke. Outstanding. Thank you all. All right. First witness for the defense, please.
Yes, Your Honor, the defense calls Mr. Blake Doncourt to the stand.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Good, thank you. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
My name is Blake Doncourt.
Thank you. Ms. Balaji.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to begin by talking about your career and your company, Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. What position do you hold at Lush Fertilizer?
I'm the Chief Executive Officer or CEO of Lush Fertilizer.
And how long have you been working at the company?
I've been working at Lush ever since I started it back in 2000.
And could you tell us a little about Lush Fertilizer Incorporated?
Absolutely. So when I first started Lush, we were a small unknown producer of fertilizers, and I've since grown us into one of the premier producers of fertilizers in the world. Our product, Lush Fertilizer, is used by governments, individuals, and businesses to produce vibrant green grass. We have put extensive research into developing our products, and I've worked night and day to make our Lush the profitable company that it is today.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. And how has Lush's success helped you give back to society?
So giving back to society is actually very important to me, and the success of Lush has allowed me to contribute 10% of our profits to various charities. Now, these charities work to clean up the most polluted areas of the world's oceans, educate the public on environmental issues, and decrease the global nitrogen footprint. Pursuing to these charities, I was nominated for the Champion of the Earth Award in 2020, and I had hoped to win it.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. Moving on, I want to talk about the Lush Fertilizer product and the chemical known as Drufo. What is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent that we use in our product, Lush Fertilizer.
And why is Drufo coming into question today?
Dakota Weirs and Casey Rogers are asserting that Drufo is carcinogenic and is linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. However, before we ever put Drufo on the market, we did extensive research to check whether or not Drufo was toxic and any risks it might have, and we did not identify non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as a risk.
Thank you. And now I want to address the argument about warning labels on Lush Fertilizer. What factors did you consider in putting a label on your product?
I would say that the number one factor we took into consideration before putting a warning label on our product was consumer safety. We wanted to make sure that there was no harm coming to any of our consumers. So before we ever put the product on the market, we did extensive tests. Our toxicology research team looked extensively into any potential negative effects of the chemical, and we found that there was no negative effects, and under no federal or state law would we be required to put any additional warning label. So we just put a standard fertilizer warning label on our product.
And was there any evidence linking Lush Fertilizer to cancer?
Oh, absolutely not. Like I said before, we ran extensive tests on Lush Fertilizer before we ever put it on the market, and we did not identify cancer as a risk. I would never release a product that causes cancer onto the market.
Moving on, I want to address the claims that Carson Durst has made regarding Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. When did you become aware of Carson's claims about Drufo?
I didn't become aware of these claims until after Carson had already been fired from Lush and had begun working for our competitor, Terra Greenery.
And were there any opportunities given to Carson to provide you or your company with her claims?
Yes. In fact, as part of Carson's job, she would have had numerous opportunities to provide me or the team with any of these claims, but we never heard anything.
And how would you like to respond to Carson's email that she claims is relevant?
This email is completely manufactured. This email doesn't exist in our email system, which we turned over to the plaintiff's lawyers. A search of our email system did not find this email, and I believe it is manufactured.
And what else has Carson claimed to be true?
Carson also claimed that we crafted our development reports to leave out negative details about Drufo, but this isn't true. We craft our development reports honestly here at Lush, and any other researcher would agree that our development reports are crafted honestly.
And what do you make of Carson working for Terra Greenery?
I mean, frankly, I'm hurt that Carson took the wonderful position we offered her here at Lush and went and worked for our biggest competitor, Terra Greenery. I mean, it's a hurtful thing.
And how would Carson, if anything, working for Terra Greenery pose a threat to your company?
Well, I didn't think that Carson working for Terra Greenery would really pose a threat to my company because we had signed a non-compete agreement when Carson was first hired at Lush.
And how often do you give non-compete agreements to your employees?
I would say that every employee I hire, I have signed a non-compete agreement.
Is this compete agreement used regularly?
Yes, like I said, every employee I hire, I have signed a non-compete agreement. So it's a regular thing at my company.
Thank you. Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm constructively sharing what has been marked as Exhibit 5 to the witness.
Record will so reflect.
All right.
Can you see that, Mr. Doncourt?
Yes, now I can.
Do you recognize it?
Yeah, this is the non-compete agreement that Carson signed with me when she was first hired at Lush.
And is this a fair and accurate copy of that document?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time, I move for the admission of Exhibit 5 as evidence.
Is there any objection to Exhibit 5?
Yes, Your Honor. Object to hearsay and relevance.
All right. Tell me about your relevancy objection, Mr. Howell.
Your Honor, this non-compete agreement is not relevant as this was signed over 15 years ago, and this issue was settled in court also over 15 years ago and has no bearing on the case today.
All right, and your other objection was what?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
All right, and tell me about that.
Your Honor, this is a out-of-court statement being offered for the truth of the matter within the non-compete agreement asserted.
Ms. Balaji.
Yes, Your Honor. As for the hearsay objection, under Rule 8033, this is a statement of motive, intent, or plan, as both Blake Doncourt and Carson Durst have signed this agreement and agreed to follow the terms within it.
All right, anything further on this? All right, the objection's overruled. I do find, I think that frankly, the relevance is quite marginal to the lawsuit, but it's coming in notwithstanding that. And I reject the hearsay argument because it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. It's offered for a different purpose, which is to show that there was some agreement, at least, not to disclose information in the broadest sense. So go ahead with your questioning on this Exhibit 5, which is admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Permission to publish this exhibit to the jury?
Granted.
Mr. Doncourt, what does the non-disclosure covenant say?
The non-disclosure covenant specifies that the employee, in this case Carson Durst, will not disclose any trade secrets about how Lush produces our product or runs our company to any third party. And this would include competitors such as Terra Greenery. Sorry.
My apologies, Mr. Doncourt. And how, if at all, do you feel that Carson has violated this agreement?
I do believe that Carson has violated this agreement. For starters, as part of his testimony today, Carson has spoken about how we produce our product. And additionally, Terra Greenery is about to release a product similar to ours, which I believe to be hardly a coincidence.
Thank you. Finally, I would like to address the claims about you baking your products and the decisions that go into doing so. What does baking a product do to it?
So baking a product is a process that can remove any potential carcinogens from that product.
And was it necessary to bake your product?
No, it was not. Like I mentioned before we ever put our product on the market, we ran extensive tests into the toxicity and potential carcinogenic effects of the product, and we found that there were none. So since we had found that the product was safe before we ever put it on the market, there was no need to bake it.
And was there any financial motivation that you considered in baking your product?
Well, I do run a company, so of course I always have to take my finances into consideration, but the number one factor I looked at here was consumer safety.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Balaji. Mr. Howe, cross-examination. Oh, wait a second. Let's give our judges a brief moment. All right, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Doncourt.
Good afternoon.
You are the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer,
That's right.
and you have grown this company into one of the world's largest suppliers of fertilizer.
Yeah, I'm very proud of my company.
Exactly. You're extremely proud of your company's success,
That's right.
and you have worked night and day to build this company into what it has become.
Yes, I have, and like I said before, I'm very proud of my company.
But your company is now being threatened by a lawsuit.
That's true, and I think it's very regrettable that my company would be threatened by this lawsuit when we're innocent.
And this is a lawsuit which could cost your company potentially millions of dollars.
Yes, I suppose that's true.
This is a lawsuit that could potentially cost your company its reputation.
Well, I believe that, yes, I suppose that's true, but we're innocent, so I'm not too worried.
But Mr. Doncourt, if this lawsuit goes a certain way, it would significantly damage the company you have worked so tirelessly until today to build.
Well, if this lawsuit were to prove that my product caused cancer, I think I would have much bigger concerns than just the reputation of my company.
Let's talk a bit about Drufo now. Drufo is a chemical within your fertilizer product.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's an important chemical.
Yes.
It's one that has propelled your fertilizer to the top of markets within the United States.
Yeah, well, I'm not a chemist, but yes, it is, yes.
And it is a product, a chemical, which has been alleged to be carcinogenic.
Yes, and I know it's not carcinogenic because of the research we did
But Mr.
before we
Doncourt,
ever put it on the market.
There are allegations that this product is carcinogenic,
Yes, there are.
specifically linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Yeah.
And you agree that non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is a disease that is not genetic?
I'm not a doctor and I don't know whether non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is genetic or not, but
Mr.
I
Doncourt,
think so, yes.
is it your testimony today that you do not know if non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is genetic or not?
No, I'm sorry. I believe it. I know it's not genetic. I'm sorry. I forgot for a moment.
So this means that to contract the disease, someone needs to be exposed to a harmful environment.
Yes, that's well, I'm not a expert in cancer or anything like that, but I suppose that's, if it's not genetic, I suppose that that means it must be gained from somewhere else. Yes.
And one of these things that it can come from is fertilizer.
I suppose so. Yeah.
And because of this risk, there are measures that fertilizer companies can take to reduce that risk, such as baking the fertilizer.
Again, I'm not an expert in cancer, but I am aware that baking is a process that can be used to reduce the risk. Yes.
Mr. Doncourt, baking wouldn't just reduce the risk, it would eliminate the risk of that product causing cancer.
Yes, that's true.
And baking the fertilizer is a measure that your company did not take.
Well, like I said before, we had already known through our research that the product was not carcinogenic. So we knew it wasn't carcinogenic anyways.
But Mr. Doncourt, this measure that would eliminate the risk of it being carcinogenic was a measure that your company did not take. That's a yes.
Yes, it is, because it would be pointless since we already knew it was not carcinogenic.
Mr. Doncourt, do you have Exhibit 8?
Could you constructively screen share it to me?
Yeah. May the timekeeper constructively share this Exhibit 8.
Thank you.
Mr. Doncourt, this is the amortization table that you created.
Yes, it is. Yep.
And this is a fair and accurate copy of that table?
Yeah.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff requests that Exhibit 8 be admitted into evidence as its accuracy and authenticity have been shown.
Any objection to Exhibit 8?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Exhibit 8 will be admitted. Thank you, Ms. Balaji.
May this exhibit now be constructively published?
Yes, please.
Mr. Doncourt, the initial year after you made this table, by not baking Drufo, your profits had an estimated increase of 6%.
Yep, that's right.
And each additional year thereafter, there was an estimated profit increase of 2% by not baking your product?
Yes, this is the table I made, so yes.
Please take, you may now take the exhibit down. And Mr. Doncourt, these extra profits that you got by not baking Drufo were profits that your company needed. Isn't that correct?
Well, I don't know if we necessarily needed them or not. Of course, I can't deny that having more money is always helpful, but they weren't strictly necessary.
Is it your testimony today that your company did not need these profits?
Well, I would say that, of course, we needed to pay back our venture capitalists, but I wouldn't say that these profits were strictly necessary. We did need profits, of course.
Mr. Doncourt, in your own words, Lush Fertilizer needed these profits to pay back the vulture capitalists. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Is there redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Maloney.
Mr. Doncourt, why did you make a spreadsheet relating costs in baking Drufo?
I look carefully into the finances of any decision I make for my company. So, of course, I wanted to look at every possibility.
And what did you discover after making the spreadsheet?
After I ran the numbers on the spreadsheet, I discovered that Drufo, it would cost my company some amount of money to bake Drufo. And I had, of course, paired that with the knowledge I already knew from my research team that the product that we were producing was not carcinogenic. So with those two factors combined, I chose not to bake the product.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Kramer?
Yes, Your Honor.
Next witness, please.
Your Honor, the defense would like to call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand, please. Good afternoon. Please state your
Just a moment. Oh, let me swear you in. Doctor, I apologize. I'm just getting caught up. You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to offer will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Please introduce yourself, Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Devin Williams. Last name spelled Williams.
Thank you, Ms. Kramer.
Dr. Williams, I'd like to begin by talking about your educational background. Where did you begin your education?
I received a Bachelor's of Science in Toxicology from the University of Utah in 1993.
And where did you continue that education?
I went to Colorado State University, where I earned a master's degree in forensic toxicology in 1998. I then went on to earn a PhD in toxicology.
Hang on just a moment. Forensic. You got an MA in forensic?
Forensic toxicology.
Okay. Go ahead.
I then went on to earn a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology from CSU in 2003.
Do you have any certifications in these fields?
I'm certified in clinical and forensic toxicology in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah.
Dr. Williams, what is toxicology?
Toxicology is the study of effects that chemicals have on the human body.
And why is that relevant in this case?
One of the potential effects of using chemicals is cancer. So as a toxicologist, I researched cancer, specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, as a result of using chemicals.
Now I'd like to discuss your experience in these areas. Can you explain some of your past roles as a forensic toxicologist?
After receiving my bachelor's, I worked as the chief medical examiner toxicologist at the Larimer County office in Fort Collins for 2 years.
And what did that role entail?
I analyzed human samples collected from autopsies to determine the role of drugs and other toxic chemicals in cause of death.
Do you have any other relevant experience in forensic toxicology?
I taught as the assistant professor of toxicology and pathophysiology at CU for 7 years.
Do you have any other teaching experience?
I currently teach toxicology at CSU and forensic toxicology at the University of New Mexico.
Your Honor, based on Dr. Williams' education, experience, and knowledge, we would like to admit the witness as an expert in forensic toxicology with a specialty in toxicology of environmental and occupational chemicals.
All right. Any objections? So, all right. So she's offered as an expert in forensic toxicology with a specialty in environmental and occupational chemicals and their effect.
Yes.
Is that correct? All right.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any objection or voir dire?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. So Dr. Williams will be admitted as an expert on toxicology, on forensic toxicology, specializing in environmental and occupational chemicals and their effect on the body. Go ahead, please.
I would now like to discuss your current position. What is your current position at Lush Fertilizer?
I am in charge of the toxicology research and development labs at Lush, as well as the company's ethics committee.
And how long have you served in this position?
For 12 years.
Can you explain to the court what you do at Lush?
I lead the labs at Lush and oversee work concerning our fertilizer's environmental impact. My role is to maintain DRUFO's major benefits while keeping our customers safe.
I would now like to discuss Lush Fertilizer's use of the chemical DRUFO. Dr. Williams, can you explain to the court what DRUFO is and how it works?
In order to understand how DRUFO works, I must first begin with how fertilizers work. So fertilizers enhance plant growth in two ways, either by adding nutrients or by increasing the effectiveness of the soil. The issue with this is it creates a problem known as eutrophication.
Dr. Williams, what is eutrophication?
Eutrophication is the buildup of nitrates in bodies of water. When fertilizer is sprayed, excess nitrogen in the fertilizer is converted into nitrates, and those nitrates are then carried into streams and lakes.
And what is the danger of the eutrophication process?
When those nitrates accumulate in bodies of water, they create algae blooms that harbor bacteria that can be harmful for humans. Luckily, Lush created DRUFO as a way to prevent eutrophication and prevent those dangerous blooms from growing.
How does DRUFO prevent algae blooms and toxic bacteria?
DRUFO uses a binding agent so that less fertilizer needs to be sprayed in order to achieve the same result. Less fertilizer means less nitrogen, less nitrates, less eutrophication, and ultimately less danger for humans.
Thank you. Now, I would like to address the use of DRUFO on a global scale. Have there been any complications with DRUFO's use in other countries?
Unfortunately, yes. DRUFO is currently banned in the European Union. However, that ban is not based on cancer concerns.
What are the EU's concerns surrounding DRUFO?
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Dr. Williams is not speculating on why the EU, on what the EU's concern surrounding DRUFO is. Just because she isn't a part of the EU doesn't mean she can't form her opinions on their findings surrounding a chemical she closely works with.
Response, Your Honor.
Yes, please.
Absolutely no foundation has been laid for Dr. Williams to be familiar with this EU ban. No questions have been asked of whether she has read this ban, is intimately familiar with its contents and what those contents mean. Therefore, any testimony she has about this ban is speculation.
Your objection is well founded, but it's overruled because I want to hear the evidence.
Yes, Your Honor.
And so what are the EU's concerns surrounding DRUFO?
The EU has a nitrate directive that prohibits the use of fertilizers that contain certain amounts of nitrogen. Although Lush's DRUFO-based fertilizer greatly reduces the amount of nitrates it produces, it still contains nitrogen. When the EU tested Drufo, they determined that it contained more nitrogen than its directive allows, so they banned it.
And do you believe that was an accurate conclusion?
I do not. The EU tested Drufo under unrealistic laboratory conditions.
Objection, speculation again, Your Honor. Still no foundation has been laid about how the EU tested this and why Dr. Williams would be able to testify about how they should have.
So I'm concerned about foundation as well, Ms. Kramer. What about that?
Your Honor, in this question, Dr. Williams is getting to how the EU tested Drufo, and she is using her personal knowledge about Drufo as she is an employee at Lush who works directly with this chemical. So she would be able to talk about the experiment they produced to ultimately ban the product.
All right. I'm going to sustain Ms. Newman's objection and direct Ms. Kramer to ask a different question.
I would also like to strike any testimony Dr. Williams spoke of.
The jury will be directed to disregard the question.
All right.
Go ahead, Ms. Kramer.
How did the EU test Drufo?
The EU tested Drufo in a lab, which is a large reason why I believe that their decision to ban Drufo was inaccurate and misinformed. By testing Drufo in a lab, they were not testing it where it is intended to be used, which is in the environment.
And why do you believe the results of that study wasn't an accurate conclusion?
Because Drufo is created to be used within the environment. The whole reason that Lush created Drufo was to reduce the amount of nitrates that fertilizers produce, but that conclusion will only be reached when it is used in the environment.
And why is that significant?
Like I said, that's where Drufo is intended to be used, so its major benefits of reducing nitrate output and ultimately reducing eutrophication will only show themselves when it is tested in the environment.
What was Lush's reaction to the EU's decision to ultimately ban Drufo?
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of foundation again. Dr. Williams still has not testified about actually reading and becoming intimately familiar with this ban and also study.
Ms. Kramer, so the question is, what was their reaction? I think the foundational question would be, do you know what it was? And then you can follow up with what it was. So go ahead and ask a new question.
Dr. Williams, as you are an employee at the company Lush Fertilizer, do you know what their reaction was to the EU's decision to ban Drufo?
Yes, as an employee of Lush, I'm very aware about the EU's directive that ultimately resulted in Drufo's ban. I'm very well informed on Drufo's global use, and I was aware of Lush's reaction, which at the time we could have fought their decision, but we were a brand new company, we had limited resources, so we as a company decided to focus our efforts into saving the planet as opposed to fighting pesky legal battles.
And does Lush intend to take any further action concerning Drufo's use in Europe?
Yes, in fact, my department is currently finishing a study that will prove that Drufo-based products lead to reduced eutrophication when used in nature. We plan to submit those findings to the EU so that they will reconsider their misinformed ban.
I would now like to turn our attention to the plaintiff's claim that Drufo was related to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Doctor, in your professional opinion, is Drufo related to the cause of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, the use of Drufo has not been correlated with an increase in cases of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, or any other cancer for that matter. Notice I say that it doesn't correlate with an increase in cases. I can't just say that Drufo doesn't cause cancer because that isn't how science works.
Can you elaborate on this?
Well, if you take any group of people, a small number of them will develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Regardless of whether those people are using Drufo or not, a few of them will get cancer. However, we've confirmed that using Drufo doesn't cause an increase in the number of cancer cases.
And what information did you gather to come to this conclusion?
We use statistics to analyze how many Drufo users develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma compared to the number.
Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Improper lay opinion. No foundation has been laid for Dr. Williams to be able to rely upon statistics. She's simply an expert with the occupational and environmental effects of chemicals.
All right. My view is she's just, no need to respond, Ms. Kramer. She's just testifying as to what she did, and she can do that. So that objection's overruled.
What information did you gather to come to this conclusion?
We use statistics to analyze how many Drufo users develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma compared to the number of non-Drufo users who develop the disease.
And what did this data show you?
All of our data came in below a normal confidence level, meaning that people who use Drufo do not have an elevated risk of getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Thank you. Now, I would like to discuss the plaintiff's witness, Dr. Rogers' study concerning a relationship between Drufo and cancer. Doctor, can you explain in your own words the plaintiff's claim?
Dr. Rogers claims that there is a correlation between using Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. However, these results are not accurate due to the fact that they were based on a flawed study.
And why do you believe that Dr. Rogers' study was inaccurate?
Dr. Rogers compares the incidence rate of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma for farm laborers and gardeners compared to that of normal people.
And why do you believe that that diminishes the accuracy of Dr. Rogers' study?
Dr. Rogers is comparing apples to oranges. Of course, people like farm laborers and gardeners are more likely to get cancer because they are exposed to products and chemicals and environmental conditions that normal people would never come in contact with. Those people have a higher likelihood of developing cancer solely because of their environment, not because they use Drufo.
And how would you have accounted for this to ensure that the study was accurate?
In order to make Dr. Rogers' study reliable, one must compare something like farm laborers who use Drufo to farm laborers who didn't use Drufo. This is the type of study that Lush conducted when we confirmed there was no correlation between Drufo and cancer.
Did you observe any other problems with Dr. Rogers' study?
It is crucial to note that Dr. Rogers' study has not been peer-reviewed or replicated. All of his findings are based solely on his own biased conclusions and have not been confirmed by anyone else.
And why do you say that Dr. Rogers' study is biased?
Dr. Rogers' entire career is to find the harmful effects of chemicals. If all he is looking for are the harmful effects, then that is all he's going to find.
Thank you. Finally, Dr. Williams, I'd like to return to your conclusions in this case. In your professional, expert opinion, based on research and studies you've conducted, does Drufo cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
I am confident that it does not. There's no valid evidence to support this claim, and research I've done and studies I've conducted prove that Drufo is not only a safe product for humans, but a revolutionary product in keeping our planet safe.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions at this time.
All right. Thank you, counsel. We'll give our judges another moment. All right, Ms. Newman.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, you are the ethics committee chair for Lush Fertilizer. Isn't that right?
Yes, I am.
So it was your duty not to consider the benefit of the company over the detriment of your customers. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
You were also the lead of the toxicology research labs, right?
Yes, I've been in that role for 7 years.
Right. And that means that it was your job to find the harmful effects of chemicals on the body. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
You attempt to discredit Dr. Rogers study in your statement multiple times, right?
Yes, it's unfortunate that Dr. Rogers' study is inaccurate.
Right. You say it's inaccurate because of what you perceive to be confirmation bias.
I believe it's inaccurate for multiple reasons, but that is one of the reasons, yes.
All right, I'd like to talk about your own examination of Drufo now. You believe that there is no elevated risk of developing cancer when compared to Drufo?
That is what my studies have concluded, yes.
That's right, because you looked at a population of people who compared, who used Drufo to a population of people who used other fertilizers, right?
That's correct.
And all that data was consistent with users of Drufo not having an elevated risk of developing cancer as compared to the users of other fertilizers, right?
Yes, we confirmed that Drufo did not create an elevated risk of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
However, this was data that you looked at from a study you never mentioned the specifics of in your statement. Isn't that right?
I believe I do discuss the nature of my study in my statement.
Is it your testimony here today that that was your study that conducted this?
It was a study conducted by Lush, and as an employee of that company, I include myself as a person who was involved in that study.
Is it your testimony here today that Lush conducted that study?
Can you confirm which study you are referring to?
The study that looked at data that compared the users of Drufo to the users of other fertilizers. The study that you base your whole expert opinion on, that Drufo could not have caused the cancer in this case.
Okay, and can you repeat your question, please?
Yes, is it your testimony here today that Lush Fertilizer conducted that study?
I believe that Lush is very knowledgeable about the contents of that study, which is why I discussed it in my statement.
Dr. Williams, so it's your testimony today that Lush didn't conduct that study.
I cannot recall exactly who conducted that study. We've done numerous studies concerning Drufo's safety.
So Dr. Williams, in your statement, you don't confirm who conducted this study. You don't confirm even who was actually studied specifically. Do you?
We compared people who used Drufo to people that didn't use Drufo.
So you don't mention who specifically was used. We don't know if these were gardeners and farmers compared to normal people. We don't know if this was gardeners compared to farmers who don't use Drufo, because you don't mention that in your statement, do you?
I suppose not.
No, you don't. You actually don't even mention when this study was conducted, do you?
It was not necessary for me to discuss when it was conducted in order to discuss the contents of that study, so I didn't find it necessary to include that information.
So Dr. Williams, you didn't find it necessary to include when this study was conducted, who conducted this study, even who was in this study. The only relevant information was that the data was something you agreed with. Isn't that right?
The data confirmed that Drufo is a safe product, which it is.
That's right. You have always believed that Drufo is a safe product. Isn't that right?
I believe that it is, and studies I've done prove that fact.
Is it your testimony here today that you have done studies that prove the total safety of Drufo?
Lush, as a company, including myself as the lead of the toxicology research and development labs, we've done numerous studies to prove Drufo's safety.
So that's a yes. It's your testimony here today that you specifically have done studies that prove the complete and total safety of Drufo.
Lush, as a company, which I am an employee of, yes, we have conducted studies to determine Drufo's safety.
So that's a no. You personally haven't conducted any studies that prove the actual safety of Drufo.
As the leader of the labs, I have been a part of the studies that have been conducted at Lush concerning Drufo's safety during my time of employment there.
Dr. Williams, nowhere in your statement do you include those studies that prove the total safety of Drufo, do you?
I believe I do. I discussed the study that I discussed previously on Direct, comparing the results of non-Drufo users who developed
Dr. Williams, you just testified
Objection,
that you
Your
don't
Honor,
know who did
badgering
that
the
study.
witness.
Stop. Ms. Kramer, go ahead.
Objection, Your Honor, badgering the witness.
Well, I'm not sure that it's badgering, but I do want the witness to be able to answer the question fully. So I'm going to direct Ms. Newman to allow her to answer. So in that sense, the objection is sustained.
Thank you.
Dr. Williams, you just testified that you don't know who conducted that study that compared the users of Drufo to the users of other fertilizers. That's something you just now testified to.
I cannot give you a specific name because that information is not included in my witness statement.
And yet you just testified that you did the study?
I believe, my apologies, that information is not included in my witness statement.
That's right. That's what we established before. None of that information is included in your witness statement. So you didn't conduct any studies that proved the true safety of Drufo.
Again, who conducted that study is not information that's in my statement, but I would be happy to answer it if you would like.
No, we just established that you can't. However, you still believe that Drufo does not cause cancer because it is far too statistically unlikely. Isn't that right?
Absolutely.
Yes, you base this because there's no statistically significant increase in the development of cancer of Drufo users. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Nowhere in your statement do you include your error rate for what is and is not statistically significant, though, do you?
The error rate was so insignificant that it wasn't necessary to include that.
Well, an error rate is something that is the probability of making a false inference based on the data. Isn't that right?
I believe so.
Yes. So you choosing to believe this information to be irrelevant means that the jury will never know the probability of you making a false inference on the data you looked at, right?
This is not a false inference at all. I've analyzed the data, and as I said, the error rate was so insignificant, we didn't even have to include it.
Well, Dr. Williams, that's not in your statement, so the jury will never know if it actually was so insignificant, because nowhere in your statement do you say that. Isn't that true?
Yes, because it was so statistically insignificant.
Dr. Williams, is it your testimony here today that the error rate itself was
Objection, Your Honor.
so small?
Asked and answered.
Objection sustained. Let's just move on.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, despite the fact that we will never know if that inference was correct or not, you believe that it is highly unlikely that Drufo caused the cancer in today's case, right?
Drufo is not a carcinogen, so no.
And you believe this is fortunate for Lush, for its stockholders, and for the planet, right?
That's correct.
That's the exact order you gave, isn't that right?
I believe so, yes.
And again, you were the ethics committee chair.
Yes, I'm very proud of that position.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Hang on just a minute. All right. I'll get caught up. Ms. Kramer, redirect, please.
No redirect, Your Honor.
Thank you. Hold just a sec. Next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. My apologies, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Ms. Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Okay. Ms. Kugler, say something into the microphone again. I'm afraid you're fading a little bit. So let's just do a little sound check. Timers, please don't keep time yet.
Can you hear me, Your Honor?
There we go. That's much better. Ms. Sayers, is that working for you okay?
Yes, I can hear it just fine.
Fantastic.
If you don't mind, Your Honor, I'm just going to take a second to boost the microphone slightly. Okay.
There, I appreciate that.
How's that, Your Honor?
It's fantastic.
Okay.
All right, so will the witness raise her right hand? You solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to offer in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Skylar Weirs, SKYLERWEIRS.
Thank you. Ms. Kugler.
Hello, Ms. Weirs. Why are you here in court today?
Well, I'm here to testify about Lush Incorporated and its product Drufo.
And before we begin, I'd like to touch on what the court has already heard from prior witnesses, that is, your relationship with the plaintiff. Can you describe the relationship between the two of you?
Well, Dakota is my twin, and I love Dakota, but I just can't support their lawsuit against a company that did nothing wrong. The research I've done shows that this company has nothing to do with their health conditions.
I'd like to talk about your background and experience. What do you do for a living?
I'm an investigative journalist for Rationalist magazine.
And what are some of the articles you've written?
Well, I spent almost a year writing essays about modern agritech, which led me to research Drufo for almost a year.
And can you explain your research process?
Sure, I look at information maintained by agritech companies like Lush Fertilizer, for instance, and publications they've made and studies they've done.
And what, if any, government publications have you reviewed?
I look at information maintained by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
And how would you describe your knowledge of modern agricultural technology?
I have a very thorough understanding of modern agritech acquired through historical, modern, and statistical information. After researching Drufo for almost a year, I have a very thorough understanding on it and modern agritech.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, we would like Skylar Weirs to be qualified as an expert regarding modern agricultural technology.
All right, so the witness is offered as an expert on modern agricultural technology in the broadest sense. Any objection or voir dire?
Voir dire, Your Honor.
Go ahead, Ms. Sayers, whenever you're ready.
Ms. Weirs, you have no formal education after high school.
I believe that the knowledge I acquired couldn't
Ms.
be acquired
Weirs.
through a college degree, so no.
You have no formal training in the field of agritech.
Once again, I believe that the knowledge I'm testifying to couldn't be acquired through a formal training, so no.
You have no work experience within the field of agritech.
I'm an investigative journalist, so I investigate publications by agritech companies, but I don't work for them. That's not my job.
So you have no work experience within the field of agritech.
I mean, I work as an investigative journalist in the field of agritech, but I don't work for agritech companies.
And you have never participated as a part of a scientific study.
No, I use research based on
Yes.
look at reputable scientific studies
Thank you,
maintained
Ms.
by
Weirs.
sources.
Your Honor, we renew our objection to Ms. Weirs being allowed to testify as an expert in modern agritech and request you to reconsider your earlier ruling on the matter. Given Ms. Weirs' lack of education and experience, her mere review of literature does not make her competent and is insufficient to allow her to reach conclusions based on that review. And her testimony will not assist the jury in understanding the evidence or a fact at issue.
Your Honor, may I respond to that?
Of course you may.
Your Honor, pursuant to the pretrial ruling from the court, we, the plaintiff, needed to we, the defense, needed to demonstrate 4 things for Skylar Weirs to be qualified as an expert regarding modern agritech. We needed to show that Skylar Weirs spent considerable time researching agritech companies, that she reviewed publications written by those companies, that she reviewed research studies referenced in those publications, and that she reviewed information maintained by the USDA and NASDA. And having done all 4 things in the course of my questioning and pursuant to the court's pretrial ruling in Rule 702, we would like to renew our admission of Skylar Weirs as an expert in modern agritech.
All right. Given that Skylar Weirs has no formal education, no agritech formal training, no work experience in agritech, and no participation in any study, we will deem this expert a witness nonetheless, an expert nonetheless. So go ahead. The objection is respectfully overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Weirs, let's talk about the use of pesticides in agricultural products. Why are pesticides needed in agriculture?
Well, pesticides are designed to kill harmful bacteria on crops and make them safe for human consumption.
And are any pesticide products risk-free?
No, of course not. Pesticides are poisonous, and so there isn't a product on the market that's safe.
And why is that important in this case?
Well, Dakota Weirs worked in landscaping and was undoubtedly exposed to many different pesticides. Any one of those pesticides could have caused their cancer. There's just no way to know.
Now, let's talk about Lush Fertilizer's products and Drufo itself. What role does Drufo play in Lush's fertilizer?
Drufo is a bonding agent that prolongs the effectiveness of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium in the soil. Drufo prevents these key elements from washing away and means it only has to be applied 1 to 2 times per year as opposed to 5 to 6 times per year.
And why is that beneficial?
Well, the lowered solubility and required usage of Drufo means it is less likely to contaminate groundways and waterways. It also ensures that other pesticides like glyphosate or arsenic aren't needed.
And why would a company prefer not to use glyphosate and arsenic?
Well, because the links between non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and cancer are inconclusive at best. Glyphosate and arsenic have been definitely linked to cancer. In fact, the National Agency for Research on Cancer classifies arsenic as a carcinogen in humans.
Could a person have come into contact with cancer-causing ingredients like arsenic working at, say, a landscaping company?
Of course, and a lot more often than they'd see Drufo.
And what are some potential negative effects that could come from such exposure?
Well, one could get cancer or even non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, especially if they weren't wearing protective gear like Dakota.
In your research, did you discover any link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, in my entire year's worth of research, I couldn't find a single study that correlated cancer or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma to Drufo with any certainty.
And in your expert opinion, to what extent, if any, could Drufo have caused non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in the plaintiff?
None. Drufo did not cause this illness in the plaintiff.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination, please.
Yes, Your Honor.
Wait, let me give this. Don't start the clock yet. Let's give our judges another minute. I'm sorry about that. All right, let's see. All right, Ms. Sayers, whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. My name is Feliciana Sayers.
Good afternoon.
You have, on many occasions, challenged the major players in agriculture.
I have. I pride myself on telling the truth and not being swayed by what other people tell me.
You have lost out on many job opportunities because you pride yourself on the truth.
Yes, it's more important to me to tell the truth than to make money.
For having the gall to challenge these major players.
Yes, once again, it's more important to me to tell the truth than to make money.
Ms. Weirs, you are here today testifying in support of Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, I am.
Lush Fertilizer is a major player in agriculture.
You could say that, but once again, I tell the truth. I'm not opposed to one side or the other, and Lush Fertilizer is defending the truth.
My question, that was not my question. My question is, Lush Fertilizer is a major player in agriculture, and it sounds like your answer was yes.
One could say that, but they have the truth, so.
You have also stated your support of Monsanto.
Yes, I have.
Monsanto is a major player in agriculture.
You could say that. There's other major players in agriculture besides Lush Fertilizer, and once again, Monsanto also defends the truth, so.
But Monsanto is a major player in agriculture.
Yes, but they're not the only one.
Ms. Weirs, let's talk about your research. You found that there was mass hysteria surrounding Drufo.
I felt that they were the victim of a pseudoscience hit job, and that hit job was causing mass hysteria, yes.
So you conducted extensive research into the field of agritech.
My publisher for Rationalist magazine assigned me to research Drufo and agritech, so yes.
In fact, you doubt that anyone has the same overall knowledge of modern agritech that you have.
That's my personal belief, yes.
Yet you are unaware of any study that establishes a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
I mean, through all my research, I couldn't find one, so yeah,
Is that a yes, Ms. Weirs?
that's a yes.
Ms. Weirs, you were here today when Ms. Carson Durst testified on the Mattis-Bernard study,
Yes, I'm aware.
and you heard her testify that this study established a causal link between Drufo, or C309P, an ingredient in Drufo, and it causing cancer in rats.
Yes, I heard her testify before. I was not
Yes,
aware of
Ms.
that
Weirs.
study.
That's right, you never mentioned having read this study,
I did not come across it, no.
because you only wrote one article that questions the narrative that there's a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was one article, it was a series of essays, and
Ms.
it took me
Weirs,
time
Ms.
to write.
Weirs, is it your testimony here today that you did not write one article questioning the narrative that there is a causal link between Drufo and cancer?
I wrote a series of essays, yes.
But you only wrote one article questioning the narrative that there's a causal link between Drufo and cancer.
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Your Honor, this witness has not answered my question.
Move on, please.
Ms. Weirs, is it your testimony here today that you only authored one article questioning the narrative that there is a causal link
Objection
between
asked
Drufo
and
and
answered.
cancer?
Sustained. Move on.
Ms. Weirs, pesticides are, by definition, poison.
Yes, they're designed to kill bacteria on plants.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Sayers. Ms. Kugler, is there a redirect? Let's give our judges a second.
In any case, Your Honor, I have no redirect.
All right. Thank you. All right. Is there another witness for the defense?
No, Your Honor, at this time, the defense rests.
All right. All right, are we ready for closings? Get our judges back up. Good. All right. Ms. Newman, is this you?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready. Whenever you're ready.
I would like to request that any time I have left remaining be used for rebuttal at this time.
Of course, that's granted.
May I proceed?
You may.
DDT, Agent Orange, Roundup. Dakota Weirs is shuffling towards the piano. He's hoping for the music of his childhood to break his everyday, perpetual silence. He desperately reaches for the keys, but his hands, they don't leave his side. The silence stretches on while he sits, trapped in his shell of a body, gutted with the knowledge that his life's joy is gone. Members of the jury, yet again, we are faced with another company that is completely disinterested in customer safety, and they're trying to hide it behind greenwashing environmentalist gimmicks. But as we saw here today, they failed. Our burden, prove Lush was negligent, that their negligence damaged Dakota Weirs, someone they should have reasonably expected to use their product. We have met our burden. Let's talk about how. At the beginning of this trial, Ms. Sayers asked you to remember these 3 questions. 1, how safe is Drufo? Really? Well, if the defendant had his way, we wouldn't know, because every attempt to accurately examine the safety of Drufo was ignored and suppressed. Dr. Williams can't even cite any studies Lush did that proves the actual safety of Drufo. And then she tried to lie about it on the stand multiple times. Luckily, in the midst of this blatant attempt to hide the truth, Dr. Rogers conducted his own study, which proved being exposed to Drufo once is just like being exposed to arsenic 10 times. Members of the jury, Drufo was designed to kill. Its original intentions may have been for pests or weeds, but a killer is a killer, nonetheless. 2, do we expect a 14-year-old to be able to accurately protect himself from dangerous chemicals? Well, Dakota Weirs told you that no one around him wore a mask. Why would he? He was never provided with any protective equipment. To expect a 14-year-old to always act in their best interest when everyone around them is doing the exact opposite is preposterous. And finally, 3, did Lush do enough? Well, Skylar Weirs told you about the mass hysteria surrounding Drufo, and what did Lush do? Nothing. They did not bake, recall, or even mention this danger. None of this information was put in any meetings, and their customer safety was certainly not deemed important enough for a warning label. DDT, Agent Orange, Roundup, Drufo. Time and time again, the defendant has proved they are on this list, and they should be held responsible for the collateral damage their negligence has caused. Now, Dakota Weirs didn't lose income due to the defendant's negligence. He lost the quality of his life. It is up to you to put a value on that loss, on his pain. In 2014, 4 years before Lush Fertilizers started exposing Dakota Weirs to their carcinogenic product, they made almost $2 million. Award the money Lush made when they chose to abandon their customers and give it to the person they neglected. Find the defendant liable and award Dakota Weirs at least $8 billion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newman. How much time is left for her closing? All right, good. Give the judges another moment. It looks like everybody's ready. All right. Ms. Kramer.
Before I begin, can everyone see and hear me clearly? Okay. May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. This case is about an unsafe employee, an unconnected illness, and an unbelievable accusation. Now, in order to prove their case, the plaintiff need to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that 4 things were true in this case. Now, let's stop and talk for a second about that word, preponderance. It's a big word, but here's what it means. It means that if there's just a 51% chance, even a 50.1% chance that the plaintiff is wrong, or that they haven't proven one of the 4 things they needed to prove, then you must reach a verdict for the defendant, Lush Fertilizer. So let's walk through those 4 things they needed to prove and see which one fills that test. Now, the first thing the plaintiff had to prove was that Lush Fertilizer manufactures a fertilizer that contains Drufo. That part is easy. Lush not only admits to manufacturing this fertilizer, they're proud of it. Why? Because Drufo is going to save the planet. It's going to mean fewer applications, less nitrates, less algae blooms, less damage to the environment. As you heard from Lush CEO Blake Doncourt, this is something the company cares deeply about. But that's where the plaintiff's case ends, because the next thing they have to prove is that Lush failed to take reasonable care to protect against unreasonable harm. Now, You know that Lush acted reasonably because you heard from Blake Doncourt, who told you that Lush had done careful studies and analysis and verified Drufo was safe. You heard expert testimony from Dr. Devin Williams, who confirmed that Drufo is not only safe, but will revolutionize and transform the negative impacts that fertilizers of the past have had on our planet. And you heard from another expert, Skylar Weirs, the plaintiff's own sibling, who told you the benefit of this product is that it causes less harmful exposure to humans. Indeed, Skylar Weirs testified that if you're looking for a clear link to cancer, look at some of the many other pesticides on the market, which leads us to the problem of causation. Not only did the plaintiff need to prove that Lush acted unreasonably, but in doing so, it caused Dakota Weirs harm. Has the plaintiff been able to do that? No. They have not provided one piece of evidence, one witness, one document that can definitely show you that Dakota Weir's illness was caused by Lush fertilizer. What did cause Dakota's illness? We don't know. One of the countless other chemicals Dakota worked with on her job, a job that Dakota conducted in an unsafe manner. You heard Dakota testify to working without taking the necessary precautions, the recommended precautions, to prevent being harmed by the countless other chemicals she was working with, such as other pesticides that Skylar Weir testified about, which do cause cancer. Finally, Dakota Weir's illness is tragic. Cancer is tragic. But millions of people all over the world suffer from cancer, thousands from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Yet Dakota's doctors feel like Dakota could make a full recovery. Dakota could still play the piano, could still go to school. But Dakota Weirs is coming today asking for millions of dollars for maybe unsafe employee based on an unbelievable accusation for an unconnected illness. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you've heard the evidence. We ask that you find for the defendant in this case. Thank you.
All right. Let our last judge finish. All right. Ms. Newman, you get the last word.
May I proceed when ready?
You may.
The defense would like to talk about things undone. So let's do that. Lush had an unsafe product. They were an uncaring company with unparalleled risk, untrustworthy witnesses, and an absolutely unacceptable negligence. Blake Doncourt took on a responsibility when choosing to create products that were intended to kill. And at every opportunity, they chose marketability and profits over safety. And Dakota Weirs would be paying the price for their decision for the rest of his life. Find the defendant liable. Give the money Lush made when they endangered their customers back to the person they sacrificed. Find the defendant liable and award Dakota Weirs at least $8 million. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the case is submitted. Let's give the judges some time to complete and then make sure they submit the score sheets. And we'll give them a few minutes, and then is this this is the last round, or is there another round this evening?
This is the last round.
All right, thank you. Do the competitors want comments from the judges, or do you want to just be done? Please feel free to answer that honestly.
No, we want to have a time.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nothing,
Nothing, Your Honor.
Would you like the judges to give feedback, or do you want to just be done? All right, we'll do that. All right. So we'll give the judges another few minutes, and then as soon as all the score sheets are been submitted, we'll talk to you. And I suspect we'll talk more to the lawyers and the witnesses. But of course, the judges can do it however they like, just in the interest of time.
Judge, may
I would like to say that there's a hard stop at 4 p.m. to do awards.
Fantastic. All right, Mr. Scarpato, is that what you were going to say?
I was going to make a motion to go first in my comments.
Please do, so you
Unfortunately,
can get
I have a 9-month-old daughter in the room next door who is demanding my attention. So I don't know whenever the score sheets are all submitted, I'm happy to
Do
give
it.
some thoughts. Okay. Are they all in at this point?
Yes, they have all been received. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And thank you, Judge, for the indulgence. So thank you very much, everybody, for the presentation. I thought it was really wonderful, and I know how much work you all put into it. So I wanted to be sure to thank you for all of that effort. My name is Bill Scarpato. Short introduction, I'm an assistant United States attorney here in Denver in the District of Colorado. I'm not a federal prosecutor, however, I'm in the civil division. So whenever the federal government either sues or gets sued, I am one of the folks who appears in court on the government's behalf here in Colorado. I graduated from the Temple University School of Law in Philadelphia, where I am originally from. And after that, I clerked for a federal judge and then worked for a few years in private practice before joining the U.S. Attorney's Office. If any of you have any interest in what it may be like being a lawyer for the United States of America, I think it's a wonderful job, and I'll leave my email address in the chat, and I hope you'll feel free to reach out if you have any interest. I'd love to speak with you about it. My comments to your presentation come from the place of a trial lawyer. I don't have much experience at all with mock trial per se, so please take my comments in that light. I thought I'd give a few general comments, and then at the end, just a couple of shout outs for folks who I thought did a particularly impressive job. So things that I really appreciated and liked about your presentation, I thought you all are incredibly poised. You're all excellent performers and presenters. You don't have any shyness in front of the camera or anything like that. I thought it was an extremely well polished presentation overall from all of you. That was very impressive. You all also know this file extremely well, and I think you had that knowledge of the facts ready to hand, both in the direct context and in the cross-examination context. It was pretty fun to watch. And then another thing that I appreciated, you all are very zealous advocates. There are a couple of things that I'll speak about on that front later, but I think in general, you all forcefully advocate without straying into bad behavior like name calling, scoffing, disrespectful conduct, that sort of thing, which unfortunately some members of my profession have some trouble with. So I appreciated your ability to argue your case without getting into that sort of negative behavior. A few things to think about if you are looking for areas of improvement. When you're arguing objections, I would save the argument on the merits of the case for openings and closings as opposed to arguing evidentiary objections. There were a few points where I noticed people arguing, sort of shading into arguing about why the evidence does or doesn't prove the merits of your case. But the arguments on objections should be focused on, why we should or should not rely on this evidence under the rules of evidence. So kind of keep that in mind as you're making your arguments. Sort of along the same lines, I think a couple of the witnesses may have been a bit aggressive in fighting back in cross-examination, which it's important to stick to your guns and stick to your key themes when you can get them back in, but it can hurt credibility when you're fighting on facts that really shouldn't be in dispute. the documents say what they say, whether they're authentic or not, that sort of thing. So try to police that line for the folks who are witnesses. And then finally, cross-examiners, there were some times when cross-examiners were interrupting the witness, and I get that. I understand difficult witnesses and witnesses that don't answer clear, direct questions with clear, direct answers. If it becomes a pattern, you can ask the judge to step in and police the witness that way. But when you interrupt witnesses, it can make it seem like you're trying to hide something, and you never want to seem like you're trying to hide facts from the jury. So those are a couple of things to keep in mind. But again, overall, I thought the presentation was very professional and very, very polished. So a couple of individual performances that I thought were really great. Abbott, I thought your handling of objections during the direct of Carson Durst, including, I think, a hearsay objection from the judge, was very poised and persuasive. I thought that was really wonderful. Sometimes when you're getting objections, it can be easy to get knocked off your spot, and did not there. That was very, very cool to see. Jordan, your playing of Dakota Weir, I thought was really, really good. You conveyed kind of the tragedy of his story without being over the top, overly emotional, anything like that. And it came off as super credible. I thought that was wonderful. I'm sorry, is it Kai Salter? I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. I thought you similarly did a really great job with your witness. You admitted the facts that you needed to, and you stuck to your guns where it was appropriate. You didn't claim any expertise that you didn't have. I'm not a doctor, but I think that really helped us believe you. So really nice work there. And then finally, Moira, I thought your closing was really wonderful. It was passionate, again, without being over the top. It was forceful and well organized, easy to follow. I thought it was a wonderful closing. So overall, I was, again, really super impressed with both teams. It was a very hard round to judge for sure. And again, thank you for all of your hard work. I'll leave my email in case anybody wants to speak with me, but I'm gonna drop off now. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, everybody.
Ms. Stone. We just have a few minutes,
Wow.
and I want everybody to have a chance.
Okay, no problem. I will
That's on
then
you.
keep this fairly short. First and foremost, thank you to all for making it here. That takes a lot of hard work, dedication, and absolute perseverance. And kudos to all of you and to your supporters, especially your coaches. In the interests of time, I have, I think, maybe 3 direct comments. So for plaintiff's direct exam 1, Ms. Newman, Macklin, Gifford, and Francesca, to the attorneys on that, nicely done. However, I think the witness stole the show, and Judge Schwartz can attest, I tend to make statements about witness performance just because, again, I really think they're the unsung heroes of these performances, because a witness can either make or break an attorney's performance. And in this particular instance, Macklin, your statement, it's a good thing that I wasn't required to be on camera and that I actually had my mute on, because I started laughing. Your statements, how's this go? I've been doing this long enough to teach. I don't go to school to learn. I go to school to teach. Yeah, that, nice. Very nice, very pointed, and I promise you a juror will remember that. So excellent statements. Also, falling back on your other statement, I'm not the one who's going to be winning, right? Meaning it's not, you weren't the one that's truly vested in this outcome, right? You're not here for personal reasons. You're here just to give the facts. So nicely done there. For McKenna Selby, one thing that I am going to tell you, and you can take this however you choose, I hope you use it. Not produced is not the same as didn't happen. Okay, this is not a case of pictures or it didn't happen, and you need to remember that, right? So should you in your team advance, keep that in mind. Just because it wasn't produced in your statement doesn't mean it didn't happen. And then finally for Ms. Newman, on your closing, I am going to tell you that I really appreciated your things undone, followed by your list of uns. All of the uns that you listed immediately after. I thought that was a great verbal play. But to everyone, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and I wish you all the best.
Okay, I'm just going to say one little short shout out.
Excellent.
Elizabeth Kugler, I thought you did a really good job. I am not an over-the-top trial attorney ever. I'm usually the quiet one. That is not a bad thing. If you know what you're doing, you know the questions that you're asking, it is just as effective. So good job.
I'm sorry to chime in. I couldn't agree more. That's a great point. And then
I just
one
wanted,
judge. Ms. Ray,
yeah,
go
I'll just do it quick. And I just so you all know, I've coached for years. I've been judging these. This is I did regionals. This is my second round of the states. This is one of the best rounds that I had. It was very, very hard to score. I just put it that way. It was very hard. You guys all did amazing. I mean, amazing jobs. The attorneys, I mean, just amazing jobs. I do want to point out, Miss Newman, if you want to go to law school, I'll hire you on the spot. So if you, I absolutely loved you. Like just the whole thing, like the direct, the cross, the closing. I mean, all around, like your passion, and you were getting an expert doctor to fumble over her words. Like that's awesome. Like as an attorney, like that's what we want to do. You know, it was great. A little bit aggressive, but that's just fine tuning, you know, as you go along, but very, very impressed. But I was really impressed with all of you guys, and I know how much hard work goes into it. So congratulations for making it this far, and I hope you guys advance. It's a really good round.
All right, I'm going to use just 1 minute. My name is Barry Schwartz. I'm a Denver County Court judge, and I was a civil litigator for many years and also did criminal defense as a federal public defender. What I want to do is tell you briefly, go slow and easy because it's always more effective. I'm talking fast. It's better to get 1 point across well than 10 too speedily. Be who you are, and I direct that mostly to young women because there's pressure to be more aggressive or less aggressive. I couldn't agree more with Judge Bryan. Be who you are. Some of you have a very mellow style. Some have a more assertive style. Don't let anybody take that away from you. And finally, courtesy always wins. And you were courteous. One person in particular that I found, like you were all courteous, but Ms. Balaji, you did use your own style. I don't want to call you out in particular because everybody was successful at this, but you were who you are. And you're not an assertive person, but you were effective without being so. Whereas some of the other lawyers were more so. So thank you for being ethical. Thank you for being courteous, and thank you for giving up a Saturday to do this. You guys are our future leaders. You are civically engaged, and I just can't tell you as an older person how much I appreciate it. So thank you. I wish you all the best, and I hope one of you all wins. Have a good weekend. Cheers.
Thank you,
guys. Thank you.
Thank you. And I left my email in there if anybody wants to reach out to me.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You bet. Thank you, judges. You're awesome.